Timberlane Regional School District Budget Committee. May we have the roll call, please?
Alan David, Eileen Doobie,
Here.
Lee Doobie, David Gurns,
Here.
Dan Guide,
Here.
Julie Hammond, John Hughes,
Here.
Michael Mascola,
Here.
Sean O'Neill,
Here.
Jim Paul.
Here.
Also seated at the committee table are Business Administrator Jeff Dowd and Superintendent of Schools Dr. Earl Metzler.
And just for the record, Mrs. Hammond and Mr. Doobie will be here later. Mr. Hughes, would you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance.
I'd like to take a minute or so to review the minutes from the November 21st meeting.
Mr. Chairman, if I can make a motion, I'd like to actually push that to the end of our meeting and get to the first
Right.
part of it.
Okay, is there a second on that? Okay, so moved. Correspondence, most of the correspondence came in electronically and has been distributed to the committee. Any questions or concerns about things that were mentioned in the correspondence stuff distributed? That being said, I'd like to move on to delegations and individuals. What I'd like to do, because we have such a large number of people who may want to speak, the microphone is on the corner over here. And it's portable, so you can pick it up, you don't have to bend over. I would like, because there's so many people, I'd like to ask you to limit your comments to about 3 minutes. We have no particular order, so just raise your hand and I will call you. We need, for the record, to be sure to identify yourself, your name and the town and that you're from. Yes, sir.
Right?
Yes.
I'm sorry, the microphone.
Oh, that one. Oh,
Right where you're standing is probably a good place.
it's almost like I'm a teacher.
There you are.
Almost. All right. Good evening, Ryan Richmond, President of the Timberlane Teachers Association. I stand before you. The TTA stands shoulder to shoulder with the Timberlane Support Staff Union in opposition to any drastic and draconian cuts in a proposed budget. The budget is fundamentally damaging to the culture of Timberlane, a culture that has worked hard to foster intellectual development, opportunities for all students, and a diversity of experiences. This is what makes Timberlane competitive with other schools. However, the damage that a budget like this would do to Timberlane could take years to recover from. We have sat at every Timberlane Regional School Board meeting and have watched every budget committee meeting. And we have listened to elected officials claim to be pro-teacher, yet to meet the cuts in this budget would call for massive layoffs of professional teaching staff. We have heard elected officials talk about Timberlane being at the forefront of a 21st century education, yet to meet these cuts, we would have to slash technology, pushing Timberlane backwards. We have listened to elected officials talk about safety, and yet to meet these cuts would mean cuts to building safety in the form of CIP projects and our understaffed nurses. We have listened to elected officials talk about being pro-academics, yet the reduction in staff as a result of this budget proposal, combined with efforts to arbitrarily increase class size, are in opposition to every academic study on the impact of class size and teacher-to-student ratios on student achievement. To see the effects of a cruel budget on a school district You need look no further than my home of Manchester. Misguided elected officials made similar choices, and an entire generation of students have paid the price. Not only have class sizes risen beyond the legal limit and schools operate without sufficient resources, but the city is hemorrhaging young families, and empty nesters are unable to sell their homes because of the damage done to the school district. Home values fall, and taxes go up to pay for infrastructure. We won't sit idly by and see it happen here, too. The Timberlane Teachers Association urges the members of the school board and the budget committee to reject any extreme cuts to the budget and work together to adopt a sensible budget that puts students first and is public school proud. Join us in being Timberlane proud. And we stand with the nearly 400 stakeholders that have signed an online petition urging you to do just that. Careful budget review is necessary, but an adopted budget should not diminish the quality of education in Timberlane. This proposal goes too far and too deep. Please oppose this proposed budget and any extreme cuts to the performance of the district, and provide a budget that meets the educational needs of Timberlane's students. Both bodies have copies of that signed petition. I thank you, and I hope that you will do the right thing for Timberlane.
Hi, I'm Lori Hirschenroder. I am from Plastow, New Hampshire. I am honored to be the president of the Timberlane Support Staff Union, also known as TSSU. I am here in solidarity with TTA to oppose the drastic proposed budget cuts. As a proud parent of 2 Timberlane graduates and a current middle school student, as a Timberlane paraeducator, and as a Plastow taxpayer, I am asking you to know the impact of your words, your actions, and your drastic proposed budget cuts. Our community has witnessed many discussions, opinions, and disagreements, whether at school board meetings, budget committee meetings, or on multiple social media outlets, regarding school spending, staffing, enrollment, and taxes. Personal agendas and politics have been openly displayed in full force, but through all of this, the paraeducators, teachers, support staff, and administrators of the Timberlane Regional School District have done what we do best. We engage all students in challenging and relevant learning opportunities, emphasizing high aspirations and personal growth. This is the mission of our district, and we take it to heart every single day, regardless of the noise around us. The talented, intelligent, dedicated staff of this district is inspiring. Do you want our district to continue to retain and attract exceptional staff? Please oppose this drastic budget cut that will result in massive layoffs. We must continue to grow in the direction of excellence. Drastic cuts will be detrimental not only to what we can provide our students now, but for years to come. The state of New Hampshire is blatantly causing a distraction from its incompetent and inadequate funding of our public schools by allowing towns to fight within. The state is deflecting blame on them. We must demand better funding for our public schools from our state. I represent a union that's membership is comprised of nearly 80% residents in our district towns. We have been overwhelmed by the support of our community. From passing our contracts to friendly hellos at our schools and neighborhoods, to priceless gestures of appreciation from our students, like a smile when we greet them, a please and thank you when we offer our assistance, a sigh of relief when we care and comfort them, bright expressions of hope when we teach them, or as simple as a picture drawn for you to hang on your refrigerator. We are Timberlane proud. We love our students. We love our jobs. It's time for you to do yours. Say no to drastic cuts.
Anyone else? Okay. I think at this point, we will move into the joint discussions between the school board and the budget committee. Who wants to speak first? Okay.
Thank you.
Recognize this audience from next door. My name is Brian Boyle. I'm the chairman of the Timberlane School Board. First of all, I want to thank the Budget Committee for supporting our, what do you want to call this thing? A consensus, whatever. You guys had a meeting last week, a couple weeks ago, and you supported the direction of the board. We met earlier tonight. And as a board, we decided to add $1 million to the 69 million change for this board to consider. I watched your meeting the other night after Dr. Farah and I left, and I talked to some of you people on the phone after the meeting. I heard some concerns, and first of all, there are no draconian cuts. What was talked about was 7,500 people, I think was the number I heard. We're not talking anywhere near these kind of numbers. Now, I have spent several meetings with the superintendent, and I'm sure we'll spend more collectively with each board. I believe we can come to a resolution that makes the most sense for everybody. I want to thank you people, and I want to thank my board. People understand something, that we're here tonight, we're elected by the citizens in our town to bring their views forward. We're not some kind of yahoos, trying to run off crazy, trying to do crazy things to hurt our school, hurt our kids. I don't think anyone's trying to do that. I know I'm not trying to do that, and I can assure you that's never going to happen while I'm the chairman of the school. Now, I mentioned earlier, we have we saw the first draft, if you will, of those cuts. And as I mentioned earlier tonight, there's all kinds of ways, as people on the board know, there's all kinds of ways to hit numbers. That was the superintendent and the business administrators. That was one way that they recommended to achieve what was a directive. Okay, come up with $5.5 million of cuts, show them what it looks like. That's what he did. Most people obviously don't care for what it looks like. There are a bunch of people who would like to see the number, but a lot of people don't really care for how that went down. And I just want to be clear that I mentioned earlier tonight that this district ran a year ago on $67.2 million. What was put in front of the joint boards over the last couple of weeks was $75 million. That's approximately an $8 million increase. Now, I recognize, and I think the superintendent and probably most people in this room recognize, that that was a draft. And we expected this to go through a series of meetings, whether we go from 74 to 73, 72. So it's a process. I've observed this process over the last few years at Timberlane. I'll be honest with you, it doesn't make a hell of a lot of sense to me because it makes it harder for administration. It makes it harder for the budget committee when you have people put together individual plans on buildings and then to watch these plans get chopped up. So when I was serving at this capacity of the town, we would start the meeting with the process where this is what we're trying to get to, and then collectively would work towards that. So let's face it, there's been a lot of effort put in to get here tonight. You've had a lot of people putting a lot of endless hours into building per building, department by department, and now they're seeing their work pretty much getting ripped apart. Now, some may argue that's a process. Doesn't make a hell of a lot of sense to me, but it is the process here. So the important thing tonight is we just wanted to, first of all, I appreciate Mr. Gerns. You know, this is a joint meeting we're having here together here. Our board is asked the superintendent to get a look at that thing, increasing the 69, I think it was 69.6 We're adding $1 million to that to see what that does. And we're gonna take it from there. Now, we have made no attempt, that's the duty of this job, this board. You know, dollar for dollar, as you're looking at different line items within the proposed budget. We have not done that, so that's what you guys do. So, again, thank you, but I also want to defend my board here, too, that, I want to be clear here. This board, this group of people, has not done anything to say, hey, I want to get rid of all these classes. And if whatever you've heard has not happened in this room. Now, I can't tell you it hasn't happened in life, but I can tell you, since March, I have not heard the board discuss courses of study, removing subject matters. I haven't heard that. I haven't heard anything about taking, there was a brief discussion months ago about just number of classes in the high school, but there was never any conversation, well, let's get together and let's make sure that the high school classes, anything under 5 get eliminated. That just hasn't happened. So I can assure you, it hasn't happened, and it's not even in the works to happen. I can't tell you what's going to happen in the future, but I can just tell you what's happened since March, and probably won't happen for the next 4 to 6 weeks. The next 4 to 6 weeks is when we collectively put together a budget for the taxpayers to vote on. And then this group, and I hope you're all there, and bring all your friends to come down to the deliberative session. This is our school, this is your school, this is our towns. So that's what we're here for. We're here to help you out. Thanks.
Okay, yes.
Hello, everybody. Good evening. I come here as one of the representatives in Danville, and I wanted to just read just a quick letter that I wrote with respect to what we're doing here as the school board. I wanted to let everyone know that I wholeheartedly support a thoughtful process towards reducing the proposed budget for 2018-2019. The Timberlane Regional School District budget has seen an increase in approximately $2 million each year. This increase in taxes is not sustainable. As one of the representatives in Danville, I'm acutely aware of how difficult these increases affect our households. People in my town are struggling to make ends meet for their families, and the school portion of the property tax bill only adds more hardship. I think it's high time our district learns to do more with less. As the enrollment figures for the district are decreasing, the overall budget should follow suit. It's unrealistic and unfair to the taxpayers to pass these increases on to them while their own personal budgets remain largely static. Retirees, parents, and taxpayers as a whole need relief and deserve and expect a very serious look at the direction of the financials of this district. This effort needs to translate into a significant reduction of this budget without sacrificing the children's education being the end goal. Thank you.
Well, okay, I want to be a little clear. This is a meeting between us. Okay? I want to sort of describe a process that we follow at the Budget Committee. This has been since I've been on last year. It's basically to get input from administrators, department heads, and other officials of what they feel they need to do the job that they need to do. And then we look at these numbers and we compare what they're asking versus what they've used in the past. We vet these things and mark them up accordingly. Understanding that we only manage about between a third to a half of the total budget. The rest of it is budgets or costs that are mandated, that are through contracts defined by the state. In the case of things like healthcare and retirement, and other costs. We just deal primarily with the expenses of operation, okay? But we go through it and we test them and we vet them. And we were going through that process this year until the last meeting. That's how we get the bottom line budget. And we go through it and right up to the time where we create a budget for the budget to be presented in public hearing. And even after public hearing, we make adjustments. So, it's an ongoing, living document right to the end, and it's defined not because we start out with a bottom line and then try to work around it. We work towards a bottom line. I want to be very clear on that. That's a different process. But it gives us an idea of what people are really doing. We have found in many cases where people have, departments and on many items have asked for money, and looking at history and what they really want to do, we find that it's really too much, and we work on it to get that reduced. The issue for us is at this point, we're kind of doing it differently this year because of the decision by this board to support the school board in the 69, in the second draft of the budget. The process, we will continue to do the vetting process. We will continue to look at the individual line items and see where changes can be made. But is a very strong possibility that we're going to come up with a different number than what is recommended by the school board. We have to treat the numbers that you folks have come, like this, as an advisory to us. We will take that as a consideration in our deliberations, as we would with any department head or any citizen. So I want to be clear on that part of our process. We welcome we're glad that you folks have come in, and we look forward to continue to hear from it in a dialogue method. Okay? But you understand that the ultimate responsibility for creating this budget is ours. And we will take everything you say under advisement. It's important how you feel about it and what you want to see. But we have to do our own process. I saw a hand over here. Yes.
Kim Farah, school board. I wanted to make a couple comments, and stop me if I'm out of line here, just on some of these budget lines that I feel need some more looking at. One of the things that was added by the school board in the last year was $70,000 for field maintenance. That was a contract through Osier. Now, which I'm not disagreeing with that, but that's adding to the bottom line of the repairs and maintenance budget, or the bottom line budget for facilities here, with no offsetting for the fact that that now does not have to be done by in-house personnel. So that's something I think this committee should take a look at. That's a rather large number there. I did notice there's a $28,000 increase in the snow removal line also, and a $100,000 increase in the cleaning line, which, I mean, I have been watching all the meetings, but I'm not really sure where those seem like rather large increases that did not come out of draft 2. A couple other things is, I know remove and replacement of the outside wall of the PAC, that's on the CIP. I know that's going to be on our next meeting. I'm not really sure why. So that number is probably subject to change. Another thing I'm aware of is that the middle school has gone from 4 teams to 3. I see there's $28,000 to continue replacement of lockers that was not removed. I'm not an expert on this. I don't know where these are, but I know that, again, the declining enrollment in the middle school this may not be something that needs to be done in that year. One thing I would like to see that stays in here, and I think this is out of the second draft, is the upgrade of the building maintenance system. It's $25,000 as an engineer myself and somebody who had many old buildings that I was working in. Fortunately, I'm moving into a new building now. It's gonna pay, it can pay for itself because you can remotely monitor what's going on in your buildings and catch problems before they become major disasters. So that's something I feel is gonna save you money in the long run, so I would keep in. So those are just some of my thoughts on the budget, other than, I think the school board will be discussing staffing more, in the future.
Thank you very much.
So with the contract, were you guys on the board when you were? So we were looking at it, if I remember correctly, that by hiring Ozier to take care of the grounds here, it was freeing up his other people to take better care of all the other satellite schools and do other things, which has paid off because I've been getting nonstop compliments about how all the schools look currently. That was how that went down. I'm not wrong, right? And Kelly, no, all right. So that's why that line is still there, I would assume, because we really are. And I'm sure Dr. Metzler's getting the compliments too, not just me and other parts of the board. That's it. I lost my train of thought, so, yeah.
Yes,
Sue Sherman, I'm chairman of the CIP committee, and just to give you some history, I know some of you have been on the board here, on this committee, as well as board members. So this joint meeting had been established a few years back now, for us to be at this point in the process where we'd start to discuss what have you already noticed in your vetting process, and what have we already noticed in our work that we might want to jointly decide should easily go on as a warrant article. Because it's up to the school board to write the warrant articles.
That's correct.
And that's usually what we haven't been at this point in a discussion ever before, where we're discussing, a $28,000 line item, where we've been discussing bigger pictures. So I don't know where all of that's gonna fall, Mr. Chairman, but that had been, I thought, what we would be here tonight to discuss. So it looks like we're not gonna discuss warrant articles. I'm asking, or any of your thoughts on warrant articles?
I mean, the only thing that's been discussed so far in our committee related to warrant articles was related to the fiber optic circuit, replacement of the T1 line that's currently used with the fiber optics.
Okay, and because I'm chairman of the CIP, obviously I would want to make sure that we had a big discussion about that at the school board before we decided, with the experts in the room on fiber, to discuss what's the best option there for us.
The issue for us was we needed to move, we originally were thinking in terms of a lease.
You were gonna recommend a lease.
The idea was to reduce the first year, particularly the first year's costs,
Okay,
okay? But there is the possibility of, and this was raised, I think, at your meeting a little while ago, of getting state funding
right.
for that. But, so we knew about that, and so we left that in there, but we were thinking in terms of recommending to the school board that they consider this as a warrant. Basically, for the reason of having something done so that it could be shown to be at least close to being shovel-ready to qualify for the assessment, the state funding. So, but we hadn't finalized that yet, because we weren't sure, frankly, what our role was in recommending warrant articles. We were still sort of figuring that out. But that's where we are with that. The other items we have not gotten into yet. There may be some more once we get a little better handle on the operating budget. We can do some things with the CIP and as far as making further recommendations for warrants.
Thank you.
But the one that's up in the air right now is primarily, that's furthest along, is the replacement of the T1 line with fiber.
Thank you.
Yes? Go ahead.
I'd like to go back to Chairman Boyle's initial comment. So what I'm gathering is we're hearing for the first time this evening this, I guess you just discussed it at your meeting tonight, this 70.6?
Yes.
So that's your board's recommendation. So
Yes.
what I'd like to hear from the board is how they got to that number. If you can just talk to us about the sustained quality, what you see the impact changing as. Give us input, because all I've got right now is a number with not a lot of definition to it. So whatever you can share with this board, I think would be helpful.
Okay, next shot at this. The original number started at looking at what it cost to run the district for the year end June 30th, 2017. That's. Is it on? Is this on?
Yeah, it's on.
Okay. So that's what the original number started at, 67.
Point two.
Okay, I think, can I not be heard, or
No, I was just,
help me out?
you look better standing up if you.
Oh, okay,
like you did.
thank you. All right.
I can see the
Okay.
TV.
All right, thank you. All right, thinking to myself, I got a lot of coaches here. Thank you. Okay, so we started at what it costs to run the district for the year end June 30, 2017. Now, that was hard cost of 67.2. That did not include, obviously, surplus. It was just expenses. So I knew that obviously you have to have a surplus. You need reserve just to run an operation this size. Historically, this place runs on between $1.2 million and $2.8 million. So this year was about $2.5 million. So we came up with a number. I just came up with a number of 1.8 million. Plus that got me up to 69 million. And then I added money to honor the contractual arrangements that teachers, support staff. And in the 67.2, there was about $1 million spent in the CIP that year. That's what was actually spent last year. Now, there's more money that's coming in. There's more expenses coming in because of the increase in retirement and then the increase in probably healthcare costs. So my overall thoughts were you would look at staffing, principally administration. And my goal was to eliminate staffing, and there's also going to be, there's been, unfortunately, because we're only in November here, in November, there are, I guess, there are retirements in the works that there's going to be probably, I think, 2 or 3 jobs will get combined, senior jobs in the district. We already know of at least one of our valued teachers has already given her notice, but we'll let them deal with that when the time comes. And historically, since I've been on the board and I try to look back at most recent history, about 2 or 3 dozen people leave the district on an annual basis, and it's retirement. They move out of the area. And that combined with a shrinking population, and let's say theoretically 7 English teachers retired, left, maybe for the following school year you only need 5. The superintendent's office administration would know that better than the school board. So when they get all that information in the spring, then that group of people, that's why I never envisioned these larger teacher cuts that were being talked about, because that's just not where I saw the savings or reductions. So you're asking, Michael, what the thought process was. The thought process was I was trying to look at some efficiencies. As you guys can probably see, going through the budget, you'll see there's certain different line items where something might have been $3,000 and it's been budgeted for $8,000. You're going to probably find $100,000 to $300,000 easily in just normal operating costs. As your chairman pointed out, this board doesn't really deal with staffing. Our board does the approval and authorizing staff, and obviously the superintendent's office does the actual hiring. We do they do the interview and then bring it to us. Our board has the other authorities of looking at staffing, saying, I want to add an administrator, I want to delete an administrator, that kind of program, adding programs of study. So, no, we didn't have any, and I don't know how we could possibly do that, have any type of in-depth study. But keep in mind that if you're, even what we're proposing tonight, if the district operated at 67.2 last year, and we're now already up to over 70 million now that we're recommending. Obviously, you guys are going to have your own recommendations. We're trying to do it offsetting the mandatory increases, such as the like the big ones actually. The insurance and the state is fantastic how they every year they whack the local communities an extra 1 to 2%. The community share of the pensions. So those are real numbers. You have to deal with those numbers.
So let me just pause. So I got you starting with the expended for 17 of 67. I'm gathering from what you're saying, you're telling me the board feels that the majority, correct me if I'm wrong, the majority of the positions that will be vacated will be from attrition?
That's correct. So I'm thinking the teaching position. We're probably gonna have to deal with something from probably, I don't know, 6 to 8 administrators, but the teaching positions are strictly from attrition.
Okay. Did your board discuss anything about specific programs?
No, because quite honestly, it's a little frustrating for, I think, everybody, because to me, it's, the budget is due first week in January. Retirements, if you work here, they don't have to let you know till pretty much right up to that date.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously it's a lot nicer if Dr. Metzler knew that, okay, I've got these 25 people, this is what's happening, now he can work with an exact versus a guess. So as a board, to me, the budget process is, you've been part of this before, you've got to go through the review, you've got to go through a public hearing, so you can't, the budget gets passed by the voters in March. You can't sit back and say, well, can we put the budget off a couple months? That way we'll know who's leaving. So we have to come up with something intelligently, and I think that's what we're trying to do. And I don't see, and I'll be honest with you, I am a little nervous. I hadn't had a chance yet to talk to the super about this, but we have been going up a couple of million, and I think he was explaining here earlier tonight that it's, it's what he's projecting. Put poor Jeff on the spot here. We're 5 months into the 12-month cycle here, and a couple of years ago we went from 65 million to 67 million. We thought we thought we're going to end up at 69 million. Now we think it might be closer to 70 million. Our board eliminated a couple of administrators in the spring and froze one slot, which will be filled in combination probably in the next, when we work out something here with the administration. So we did some action, I believe, that saved the district $400,000, and we're trying to do things wisely versus haphazardly. So I hope I'm trying to answer your question here. That's.
You have. But I'd like to go back to Chairman Gerns over here. So yes. I'm getting a sense, what this board is telling me. I want to get the contrasting opinion now from Dr. Metzler. So just bear with me. So what I'm looking for is, do you feel that the reduction in the force the majority would come from this
Attrition?
This attrition. So I'm looking for your take on this.
Okay, so I don't think it's a contrasting opinion. I don't necessarily think it's contrasting. So I'm not taking issue with the word. It's just I don't necessarily, how do we get to a number that the community will have an appetite to support? the goal, or right goals, I said this at the previous meeting, I apologize, people have to listen to the same thing twice, but I don't typically write goals that I have no intention of meeting. You know, I have 55 goals. One of them was to strategize with the school board, about efficiency and how to work on a budget without, here's the key thing, without any damage to the academic integrity or academics or academic achievement in this district. And that's what we're doing. And so, you know, Chairman Boyle, you know, he said it correctly. You know, we pulled all the numbers together, and then there's some sticker shock. 75-1, oh, you know, that was not what we expected. I didn't know what the number was. I kept asking Attorney Dowd over and over, when we pull all the numbers together, where are we going to be? You know, what's the Budget Committee's reaction going to be to that number? So we pull all the numbers together, 75-1. You came back last with a challenge to come back and say, hey, show me what this would look like. And if you remember correctly, I said to you, you're not going to like what it looks like, and you're going to call it a scare tactic. And that's pretty much, you know, what we're living in right now. You know, Mrs. Green said earlier today, no, I wouldn't come back to you with something that I thought was going to hurt everybody. You know, so I just want to be clear on that. I'm going to do the best I can with whatever you give me to work with, or give us, not me, give us to work with. So I believe that, I know people don't love draft 2, you know, and we talked about equally dissatisfying everybody. I mean, you know, there are some things in there that, you know, like swimming, hockey, and skiing, and things that you would put back. This is not ideal by any stretch of the imagination. My hope is exactly what Chairman Boyle and you have just indicated, that there wouldn't be names to these positions. There wouldn't be people, you know, there'd be names if people left, but I mean, that we could get to whatever number you had an appetite to support through attrition, retirements, people take jobs, whatever, and have and be able to offer all the things that we're offering. Now, that's a challenge, you know, and what will that challenge eventually look like in terms of, well, we'll know when we know how many administrators we have to support, how many support staff we have to support, how many teachers, but that's a challenge. You know, obviously, we didn't look at eliminating classes and programs, and Chairman Boyle said it earlier, you know, we're not looking at getting rid of all these classes and all, you know, that was, you know, people get, you know, they generate their own scenarios, which are drastic and dramatic and those sorts of things. It's not ideal. I knew there'd be some more work that we'd have to do with this, but I think that's the hope, exactly what you said. The hope would be that we could get to whatever this is and have it not be about layoffs. But the reality is that this would probably mean, you know, we don't have all the same people, right? So it would mean a reduction somewhere. And that was really this board and through the school board about where would those reductions be? What do you have an appetite to support? My hope is the same as Chairman Boyle, so that's why I'm saying it's not a contrast, that we'd be able to get to some of these numbers through attrition. So, and I hope that answered your question. I can't guarantee it because I don't have the numbers, but I know a lot of that will happen the last week of December and into the early spring. That's why we do staffing in March. We have that April 15th deadline to notify people that they may or may not have a contract come July 1st.
Mike,
You had a couple
if
people.
I may add, because I know this is a little outside the budget thing, but I'm basically we're trying to win back the voters' confidence. Basically, that you put us here, we hear you, we want to make sure that we're being fiscally responsible. That's what we're trying to do.
Alan had his hand up too. David, Alan.
So,
Yeah, well, the only
you
thing I
did
wanted
have
to
your
add
hand up
was,
ahead of me, so you go
that
right
what I
ahead.
would hope we'd have to reduce, you know, the teacher, well, not, I hate to say teachers, but the staffing. If our enrollment, our class enrollment is going down, you would have to reduce that. It's not something to do, you know, even with budget concerns. What are they doing? If there's no, you know, the sizes are going down, there's not that much call for that much administrators on down the line. So, you know.
Yeah,
Let's not get away from that. It's not saying, we're saying we're inventing the wheel. The thing is, the enrollment's going down and the budget's going up, which doesn't make any sense, so stop there.
If I may.
Yep.
So, I'm a very process-oriented person, and I have had a lot of issues. My first experience here on the Budget Committee with the process as it has happened this year. And I would very much appreciate having a situation where, for example, the school board would say, these 5 things are the most important things on our list that we want to make sure that you support in your considerations and deliberations. And we take that input and we look at the detail and we go through our process. And then we have a further conversation. Rather, what I saw happen, which I have a lot of issue with, is we had an arbitrary number. You had some thought to it, but it came in as an arbitrary number that was put out there. This group, this committee, discussed it. There was a vote. I did not agree with it, but there was a vote to go to another draft that I felt was another arbitrary number, another arbitrary draft, with no guidance really provided to Dr. Metzler and Attorney Dowd to come back to us with a budget. In my opinion, what that has done, if you look around the room, whether it's here or at the library, is what that did is it dropped a bomb in the middle of the community where people felt like, whether it's the taxpayers who are screaming, they're having a hard time, no question. Whether it's the students who are like, you know what, I'm worried about if I'm going to have this extracurricular activity, or my teachers, or the teachers and the support staff who do an amazing job. They are the ones at the front line for our kids. That process basically blew it all up, and everyone spent their night here tonight since 5:30 at the library because the process wasn't transparent. The process was not. And the process was, you can disagree with me, Mr. Boyle, and you're more than welcome to do it. However, it would be much more helpful to have a list of priorities come into us as we review these. And I've done budget preparation in my past life, and I just think it's an unfair way that it was done this year. And I think we have an opportunity to decide at the end of this how we want to do things differently going forward, and I would be more than happy in whatever capacity I can offer support in developing that. But this process, the way it happened this year, was
Okay, I'd like to respond to that, please. The fact that you said that there was a random number, I just told you in detail, my number was based on actual numbers. Actual numbers.
it was
What
random
it
as it
cost
came
to
to
run
us.
Timberlane. Real numbers. No, I didn't sit back and say, I wonder what it costs to run Timberlane. No, I know exactly what it costs to run Timberlane because I had the numbers from the business administrator. We
As it
have
came
multiple
to us,
meetings. The
Mr. Boyle.
superintendent comes in routinely. I don't see this covert operation here. There's no big secrets going on in here about that. There's nothing. I don't know of any big secrets. I can tell you this. Yeah, I'm glad there's a bunch of people here. You think this is the first time you've had a bunch of people come down to a public meeting once you get into the this time of the year? I don't think so. It happens almost every year. Almost every year. These are concerned citizens. That's great. And I'm sure there's even more people at home watching.
Absolutely.
This is not that unusual. Now, the process historically has been more random. Before Jeff was even the businessman. And if you look at meetings in the past, minutes in the past, you had a senior business administrator. He knew his stuff, pretty good. Guy retired last year. He would come to this board. He would come to the school board, and he'd throw out a number. And they'd come back a week later and say, let's go $1.5 million less. That's how he did it. There's minutes that show this is how this has been done. This is not that unusual. So I'm sorry you feel that this is so unusual, but I'm not seeing it. By the way, as I said earlier, this process doesn't make a hell of a lot of sense to me. I like starting with the process saying this is the goal. That's just my personal opinion. But let's be clear, this is not the first year this has happened like this.
I'm sure that historically we have had a variety of ways of doing it. I'm just saying that I think that the number came to us without that context, which is why Mr. Mascola was asking, what was the thought process? That thought process was not transmitted to us. Similarly, I did not hear coming from the board, these are our priorities, other than a dollar number.
That's your job. This is a dollar number board. I would certainly hope you'd get dollar numbers. This is
I'm
your job.
talking about giving us guidance relative to, these are the things that we feel are most important for you to consider in your deliberations beyond simply the dollar number, because there's always trade-offs. There are always
Unfortunately,
trade-offs.
we did not have a budget to look at.
I mean, conceptually, the
No,
priorities of
not
what
a
you want.
conceptual budget. I need a budget to look at in order to then make a prioritization as to what is important based on the number that I'm looking at. How could I possibly do that? That is where this board has a problem. We did not have the complete budget. This is the first time we have had a look at this complete budget, and it's already in draft 2. Typically, as Mr. Boyle said, the business administrator would go to the school board would take a look at the number, and then, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Metzler, you would present a number to the budget committee that the school board had already weighed in on. Is that not correct?
That's not correct.
That is not correct. There was no
No,
number that
no,
the school
no,
board agreed on.
No, it's not, I've said this to you before, so I've had to adjust my style to different boards. We've had, I'd come to the budget committee, and sometimes they would say, what does the school board think? And then sometimes I would go to the school board first, and then the budget committee would be offended that I didn't go to them first. So we've done it a variety of ways, so I'm not saying that hasn't happened. In times when there was some disagreements, in terms of getting the school board support, so that I could come to the budget committee and say I had the school board support. So that has happened, and so it's been done a number of different ways. But I've actually even had to say to the budget committee before, I work for the school board. My bosses are right there. And so I take the direction from the school board. And so the budget committee was a little different process. So the process has been different, depends on the people. I mean, Chairman Boyle, he's given me a different lens. I look at the budget a little bit differently. And you're right, we had a senior business administrator. I relied a great deal. He was an absolute expert, and certainly Attorney Dowd is doing a great job as well. But he's doing it differently than the person that he replaced. It's a little different. And I have to work directly with the school board and the school board chair to. So there has been some direction, and I have to be fair to Chairman Boyle. He doesn't like some of the things on here. He was very clear, like, well, that's not happening, and that's not happening. I mean, I was showing him draft 2. We worked through this Wednesday, and then Jeff and I worked through the weekend to try to get this so that you would have it, because I didn't think that this meeting would have much value if you didn't have this in front of you.
I guess my point is that going into creating that draft, having guidance about the things that you would like to have prioritized, that's what I'm referring to.
Oh, I
So
heard that loud and clear.
Just so that it is clear.
I heard that loud and clear,
know
but
what you
I didn't want you to think that, the school board, I mean, they don't, they've provided guidance along the way. We meet, we've been talking about this since last April, right? Fair enough? So, it's not in a vacuum. Could all of our meetings be joint meetings? I'm not sure how productive that would be. But it's great that you're working together. I mean, it's this process is different every year, and I didn't come in with a preconceived notion about how this was supposed to happen. I've just kind of tried to adapt my style to fit the different groups of people that we have to work with. Nine of you and 9 of you. It's 18 different people every year. Some people stay on, some people change. It just changes year to year, but I don't think we're in necessarily that bad of a place, and it's not bad to have people engaged in the process.
I'm very happy to have people engaged. I just don't
No,
want
I know,
people
and I know.
terrified.
I know, I'm not, I don't want to imply that I was saying you didn't, so, sorry.
I have one question. It's sort of related to the upcoming budget process, or the continuing budget process. It's specific to one particular topic, and that's the soundproofing of the classrooms in the PAC. Studies have been done, and a budget and a proposal has been presented. I just need to know if, with a sense from the school board, if there's any plan or to do this year, or are we going to have to budget next year?
If you don't mind, I'll speak to this, because there was a presentation, or there was, at the last school board meeting, apparently there was a bid that has come in. There was only one bid on the proposal. The school board did not take any action at the last meeting. I've not personally seen the sound study. We have not seen the bid. There's no money right now, and we have already, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Dowd, we've already spent some of the money that is capital money, which of course is apportioned differently than other monies within the operating budget. So that soundproofing was never discussed or put into the CIP at all. So without making a vote for the board, I think it's going to be nearly impossible for the board to take some action on that this year, because there's just not, I would not feel comfortable spending down any more on the capital funds at this point. That's my own opinion. Feel free to weigh in, but again, we haven't seen the bid, and I have not seen the sound study, which I'd be really interested in taking a look at.
Yeah, the history on this, it's an agenda item for December 7th. So all that information, hopefully, and then some, will help answer some of those questions. But the history on this was a previous board. You know, we had staff complaint in terms of an area that was determined to not be safe for both staff and students. So the board directed us to do a study to figure out if indeed that was not a safe place for those activities to take place. That study did confirm that that was not an ideal place. We're talking hearing loss for both the instructors and the students that practice in those rooms. So we continued that process. We put it out to bid. We did receive a bid with a contractor. I was not at the last meeting, but I know Mr. Geary shared that with you, and then they needed more information, so we made that an agenda item. You know, my recommendation is going to be to try to find the money to get that done as soon as possible, primarily because we do have staff and students that have identified an unsafe place that we need to make safe. And I think it was the boards and some of the people that were on the board, I think your understanding was we would take care of that at some point in the near future. We knew the fall that most of that music would take place outside. We knew that they would be back in these rooms practicing, and we had hoped to have had that done before. But there was some delays in the process. We didn't get a lot of bids. The study took a little bit longer. You know, there was some, Mr. Geary could speak probably, or Mr. Attorney Dowd. I don't know if I'm missing any of the details here. But that's the recommendation that we're going to make on the 7th of December to try to get that done in this year's, and if we can't do it, we can't do it. But, I mean, that will be our recommendation. So, Attorney Dowd, you want to jump in? I mean, did I miss any?
No, I think, to your point, though, do you need to know tonight, or are you just
No,
looking for direction?
I just was curious where it was.
Yeah.
It's just to keep us posted as we go through the process the rest of during December. Any other? Yes.
I'm gonna go back to Dr. Metzler again. At our last meeting, we asked you to go take a look at that 69 million, and you gave us all this information. But at the last meeting, because you were hit blindsided with it, you said, I don't have the exact figures, but it would be, correct me if I'm wrong, catastrophic.
Yeah, I mean,
So I'm just trying to get a sense. So today, the school board is, they held their meeting, and they're now at $1 million higher than the number they were at last week. I'm just trying to get your sense. I asked you earlier about positions, so now I'm looking to find out your confidence to operate with that number. I know you mentioned you do the best you can with whatever you were given, but what do you see happening to this district with that kind of number?
Well, I think in fairness, first, you know, I apologize to Mr. O'Neill in the sense that, you know, he said you should have been looking at this all along. We've been looking at this for quite some time. So I couldn't guarantee you that I would have this for you tonight. You know, I really needed to have a private conversation with Attorney Dowd to see what his availability would be like over the weekend. I needed to have another conversation, obviously, with Chairman Boyle, which we were able to have on Wednesday, to try to pull this together. So I think, although your question is a fair question, you know, my ideal operating number here, based on looking, and I've shared this with Chairman Boyle on several occasions, is in the 72.8 range. And I have a, you know, we looked at spending, looking at what we think we're going to spend this year. Last year, we had 2 years ago, 65, last year, 67, and I know, you know, that's not my business plan to drive this up $2 million every year. A lot of it has to do with costs that we don't have direct control over. But that being said, 5 months into it, we're looking at, we're a little north of 69.5 we're projecting that we think we'll spend. It's closer to 70, and I was hoping it would be closer to 69. Now, I'm going to try to get that back to 69, and obviously some of the savings that the board has helped create this year, may be part of it. But you know, was look, what's the projected? What do we think the end spend will be? Some of it's our guesstimates, because Attorney Dow would know what are some of these, these adjustments that you need to make in the budget into May and June to make the numbers work for the audit and that sort of thing. So, it's not ideal. I think we, like I said, I'm just gonna give you my word, we'll do the best we can with what you have an appetite to support. But I think the real number, and for me, that was like a 71 spend with hopefully 1.8 in surplus to bring back. That's how I got to the 72.8, as I thought was a good number. You know, and in years past, I'd be on the business administrator, what's the default look like, what's the default look like, what's the default look like, primarily because I knew that would put us somewhere in the range of what we thought we could operate the next year without making huge sacrifices. But, we're looking at, some efficiencies here. So is my number a little high or is it a little low? We're trying to find some efficiencies because I said I would strategize with the school board to try to find, an even more efficient budget without any academic consequences, both in terms of achievement, in terms of programming, and those sorts of things. So, we'd have to make some sacrifices. But you remember, we put a lot of requests in. I mean, there's a lot of requests, CIP requests, different department requests, and those sorts of things. So there were a few numbers here that I was concerned, and I think, I think hopefully before you wrap up this portion, I'd like Attorney Dowd, at least for Mrs. Green, to explain those two lines, the $100,000 in student transportation and the $360,000 in tuition, private and other high school, because I really didn't do a real good job. I just said find some money and you found it, but so hopefully you can help her understand with some depth.
Yes, you did.
Okay.
So I heard your question. Your question was fair on both of those lines and both of those issues. And the student transportation relates to special transportation. We have been the recipient of. Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. Could you just repeat the question that you're going to answer?
I'm sorry. Would you like to ask the question, Ms. Green?
I can give you, do you want me to do it, Donna? Okay, we have, there's two lines here that Mrs. Green questioned, and one was the student transportation line, that was 2722-519-60334. That was a reduction of $100,000.
Mm-hmm.
The other line was tuition private and other high school, that was line 1200564-6017-3, and that showed a reduction of $360,000.
So on those lines, we, dealing with transportation first, we have to budget for what we anticipate our needs are going to be for transportation purposes. We've had the benefit of having some shared rides available to our students who are being transported in district or out of district for that matter. We realize the benefit of the savings from in district. We've realized the benefits of that, well, number one, because I put it in the contract with our current vendor, and number two, because as a general proposition, our special transportation company is in a similar situation to our regular transportation company, and that is that they're short on drivers, so they are able to combine rides with us. Having a student going to a placement be budgeted for transportation both ways, and having that ride be able to be shared, and have that ride be able to be shared again with students from other districts can significantly enhance our cost and cost savings. We're not at liberty to go to other districts and ask who they have, where they're going, but our bus provider can, and we have been able to generate some savings in the past years as a result of that. We are required to provide transportation for these students, and it's budgeted as such, so we cannot rely on shared rides. I'm apprehensive at the thought that our bus provider may end up in a fully staffed situation and may choose to transport the children individually, which is their right to do as well. So that is one area that I do think that we do potentially have some room on. The other lines, you mentioned tuition, public, and private. In terms of looking at the budget and the overall operation, we've really tried to look at the different areas, and these are areas that are up in our special education and student services department. They're up approximately $500,000 in total, and this brings them back closer to flat. However, I have some significant and serious concerns about our legal requirements to provide certain educational opportunities and placements to the students who are out there. And I will share with you that as of this year, we're up against our budget number in both of those areas. We do try to budget annually for, in our student services and special education coordinator they both do a tremendous job budgeting in those areas. And they do try to budget for what we know and to leave a little bit of extra room for what we don't know, what we're anticipating, because we budget so far out. This year, I have concerns about that budget being up against a wall. We're pretty much at the top on both of those. There are some significant increases. We anticipate those are going to be there. However, if we have to find the money, I think we can find the money. Our student services and special education directors are here. If it would be helpful for them to articulate the need, but in terms of looking at and trying to share some of these, what was the word? Unpleasant, what was it? What was the term?
Equally dissatisfied.
Leave every area equally dissatisfied through these cuts. That's where those reductions were made.
If I could just summarize. So this year, in this operating budget, you're saying that the private tuition on the high school level is right up against its budget number in this operating year.
That department as a whole.
And that the proposed operating budget for that department for the private tuition high school next year went up by $500,000, this line. And so you took out 360. So that seems eminently reasonable to me. So thank you. If I've construed that correctly, then that seems very reasonable. Thank you.
I just have two quick things. One, I was going through budget documents from previous years, and I noticed, I think there's a monthly report that used to be posted about expenses year-to-date. Has that been posted for 2017, the monthly reports? Because I have not seen any of them.
Yeah, I don't know, and if not, I can post them.
Could we get that posted? Because that would,
Certainly.
I would think would be an important number for budget people to be looking at to see where you are right now. I mean, you mentioned you think you're going to be up against close to 70. So could we get that posted?
Sure.
So on that typically was going to Kathy Belcher and we were posting it. I don't look online at it, I look at paper copies.
Well, I know you do, but
I know other people do.
I can't look at anything.
But I thought, that was a directive back when I said post them monthly. I think we had talked about it, right? And I said, I want them posted.
Right,
You know,
well,
so, and then I don't know that they're not, I don't go looking every month to make sure
No,
they're
I
posted until
understand
somebody
that.
says, hey, they're not posted. I'm like, Kathy,
Okay,
get
well,
that thing posted. So,
There you go. Hey, they're not posted. They have not been posted for all of 2017.
heard it loud and
Okay?
clear, so.
Got that? So the other thing is, as part of the school board and my pet peeve on transportation, we have initiated a transportation efficiency study. It was an expense of $7,500. Where do we stand on that? Because your transportation is one of the big drivers up of the budget. Just the regular student transportation, I'm not talking the other transportation, is up about 340 is your projection. Of course, that's based on a guess because we don't really know. We don't know what that efficiency study is going to give us in terms of efficiencies when we go out for the next contract. So when is the efficiency study going to be completed? Is it going to be in time for us to get a better number here for transportation?
I believe so.
But I think to your question though, I think you're asking a different question than what you just answered. So, will we have the study done and the bid,
No, I know the bid won't be done.
No, I know the bid won't, but the RFP, you're talking about the,
Even the RFP, I mean,
what
if
we're
the
asking for.
efficiency study is done and it shows, wow, you can go with 2 less buses. Each bus is costing us $65,000 and probably moving into the next contract will be closer to 70. So that could adjust this number considerably if there's efficiencies of only a couple buses.
Yeah, and so to your point, I would think our target date would probably be the public hearing, because we were able to adjust the budget last year at the public hearing, right? So, yeah, I mean, if it's as simple as that, if it's as simple as say, hey, you can do this with 2 less buses, take this much money out. I think is that the last day we can do it?
No, January 4th. You have to post the budget
No, I
a
know,
week prior.
but then we can adjust it at the public hearing, or,
Yeah.
So it's just a quick turnaround in terms of this efficiency study, so they should be doing this. I mean, I don't know how engaged the client is at this point, so.
Well,
Tom's here?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
great.
we're looking to start that Monday. He's looking to
So you're looking, so it's feasible that we would have some idea where if we can gain any efficiencies.
Perhaps, yes, but I mean, that's not factoring in, we still have to put it out to bid, collect the bids.
Correct, I
and
understand
see what
that.
the
I
increase
understand
is.
that. I
Yeah,
understand.
our hope, right, so our hope, I mean, target date of December 14th, because that's the next time this group meets. It'd be great if we knew, if that number could be adjusted in the budget in the
As
next
far as
draft.
seeing how many buses will be.
For December 14th. I don't put him under the gun. I don't know how long it takes to do an efficiency study. Maybe he looks at it and he can tell us like that. I don't know.
I think it is important, though, to remember that the figures that are in the budget as they are right now are, I think, fairly honest estimates as to where we're going to be. The intent here is that if this does go to public hearing, we do have an adjustment can be made at public hearing. It's a lot easier to adjust down than it is to adjust up to meet what those actuals will be. This is just one of those things. It's a long-term contract. It is a large expenditure, and to properly gauge and measure that that increase, it may be happening at a later point, and it can be adjusted down to that regard. In that regard, to match with those expenses, what the RFP, what our number of buses and our cost per bus are going to look like.
But I think to Dr. Parrott's point, I don't think the efficiency study is going to come back and say, you people are crazy, you need 5 more buses.
Right.
You know, I think we're I think, predicting that we're going to find a more efficient way to do this, right? And that's our hope.
Ordered the efficiency study, not the inefficiency study, hopefully, so check the box.
I have a question, because we have a number of folks here who are representing some of the athletic programs. And I'd like to hear from Dr. Metzler or the school board, or both, concerning the decisions made to eliminate the two sports, I guess, swimming and skiing. And
It was hockey as well, but.
but so I'd like to, just so that people understand why.
I think Chairman Boyle already put those back in the budget. Right? Well, I'm just.
Okay, thank you. I mean, it's, I believe that was part of the administration's analysis to, when they, okay, what does a $5.5 million budget cut look like? There was never any discussion from the school board saying, why don't you look at athletics? So it really, it never came in front of this board.
It was not a directive from the school board. That was just we were looking at everything, and just to put it, we don't own a rink, we don't own a pool, we don't own a mountain. So these were expensive sports in terms of per student. But I would say would be one of the first things. And Chairman Boyle already made it very clear. You will be putting that back in. So we'll find a way to do it. But we were looking at perhaps there were other ways, whether they're user fees or ways to generate revenue that could support this. So I don't want you to think that when we say programs, we weren't eliminating the programs like we weren't going to have them. We were just going to try to find another way to, but, again, have to budget for something that you even get revenue for. I get that. But,
Well, it was just hard to tell because it was on the cut list, so I wanted to find this, wanted it explained and addressed for the listening audience and attendees here.
And if I may,
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, it's difficult to go through the budget and to look at it and to not be accused of operating scare tactics and one thing and another, and going through and trying to figure out from each function, each area within our consolidated district, where these cuts can be made. It would be difficult to have the cut be on another side of the house in an academic area and have unions, teachers come in or parents come in and say, my student does not play any sports, and here you have to look at teachers to do that, and you have not looked at athletics. I've heard some rumblings that we don't see anything impacting music. Well, why is that? So I don't know what position that puts us in as administrators. If athletics are not impacted in some way as part of this view, as part of this initial round of cuts, where does that put us? I mean, then on the one hand, it's a scare tactic, and on the other hand, well, you didn't touch athletics, you didn't touch music, what are you doing? So we're not in a good position here, I think, to be having the right answer on that. And I think what it has done is generated some interest and discussion, and that discussion is very much appreciated. I don't necessarily like the way that it went, but it's a lot of money.
Mr. Hughes?
So when looking at that, athletics in general is typically underspent, and there is money that can be, decreased in lines that would have saved that from actually being cut. Even that those three sports alone, I mean, it's budgeted for 50, but we typically spend 30. You know, so we could have decreased some lines. I mean, did you look at, you know, can we decrease instead of actually cutting out a whole, you know, three sports? Was that,
I'll be frank.
is that too, you know, I mean, with that number that we were trying to reduce, was that more than what you, in that time frame that you had to really kind of dig in?
I think there's some hidden costs there as well, so I know we look and we think that's what we spent on those sports, and we don't know, there's 2 rinks we have to go to, or there's the cost of the pool, or the, you know, those aren't, they're not necessarily fixed costs, you know, what's the mountain gonna cost this year?
Mhm.
And so we asked Angelo, Mr. Fantasia, our athletic director, but, you know, one of the things that was brought to my attention, and to your point, like, why can't you just look at every single line in the budget and just take 3% off of it and call it a day? And, so I asked that question, I was like, geez, that would be a heck of a lot easier, Jeff, why don't you just do
Yeah.
that? And then he started to tell me why we couldn't do that, you know, so it's like, you know, so, yeah, we looked at everything, and, you know, and that was like, I have to be honest with you, we were getting down to the bottom, and I was like, I need 50 more, Jeff, where, you know? So we had an idea about what these sports cost, and then we were looking at what sports cost per pupil in terms of it, you know, how many kids are participating and how expensive it is, and we're just trying to be fair. You know, if I'm gonna just be as honest as I can be, I had a pretty good feeling, well, after my discussion with Chairman Boyle, not just the one we had publicly tonight, the one we had privately, that, yeah, that's not happening. I think he said it, you know, so, those would go back in, so.
Well, I had that directive from my daughter last night, so.
Yeah, I know. And, yeah, and so, I would say, if, you know, it's not a scare tactic. I know it always feels like it. If it was a scare tactic, it would be like, hey, we're cutting football, right? You know, then they get chased down the street, you know, so, yeah, we looked at everything. I mean, Ms. Doobie made it pretty clear, you know, please just look at everything. We looked at staffing, we looked at new projects, we looked at old projects, we looked at, it's not a great way to try to get $5.5 million out of a budget. I know it's a lot of money, and I know the bottom line's a lot of money. So it's trying to get to a number, and I'll keep saying it over and over, that the community has an appetite that they can support, right? That they don't feel like it's, they don't feel like the education's compromised in any way, but yet it's still taking into consideration the taxpayers and the burdens that, you know, some of our people are feeling because of the way the taxes go. And to Mr. David's point, it's not, I get, you know, when enrollment goes down, you're looking at staffing, and you're trying to have the appropriate level of staffing. You know, we've had this conversation so many times. You know, if you lose 3 kids, you're not losing them all in one place, so it's not just that teacher comes out of that one, you know. But you still have to adjust. That's why when they said, how can you do this? How can you reduce the number of teachers and not have impacts on the programs and those sorts of things? Well, obviously, there's ways to do it. There's ways to do it. It's hard sometimes. Sometimes we're stuck in a sense that, you know, if there's X amount of students in a particular grade level in a particular school, it doesn't divide all that great, you know. If there's 30 kids, it's 2 classes of 15. It just doesn't divide well, you know what I mean? So it's not like you can lose a teacher. So you have, wow, the class size is really small, you know, and we're not gonna recommend putting 2nd and 3rd grade together because it doesn't work that well. That's the one thing in a cooperative school district that's tricky as a district that is one town, where you'd shift kids around into they'd stay in the same towns. I would say, I've heard it loud and clear that people want to go to school from preschool to grade 5 in the town in which they live. Right? So we're not moving kids around other elementary schools. We don't have like a super elementary school to say. But we looked at everything, and obviously it's not ideal, but it was just one way to look at it, and the school board and others have said, you know, there's lots of ways to look at how to get to that number. But we looked at everything, but that really simplistic view of taking 3% out of every line just didn't happen. Wasn't possible. Oh, sorry.
Mr. Paul, did you have your hand up?
No, I did not.
Okay.
But since you asked me this question, I'm more than willing to speak. First of all, I want to thank Mrs. Diotis and Mr. Woodworth, who came in under budget from the previous year. And I'm doing it not to point out that they came under, but that I'm sure everyone took it seriously, but it was amazing to me as a first-time person on the budget committee, even though I've been in the district for 31 years, that people looked at the hard facts that they needed to look at. As an ex-school administrator and teacher in this district, I can tell you that I take it very seriously. I don't want to see the academic programs go down, and I don't want to see the athletic programs go down, and I don't want to see the band go down. But I still need to bring out the fact, and I'm going to use my mother-in-law, who's been a member of, taxpaying member since 1954. There are people on fixed incomes in this district. And if the national political procedure happens the way it's gonna happen. Those people could be saving money, pennies, dimes, and nickels in order to pay their taxes. That's a reality. So I'm for education, don't get me wrong. But I think to have a balanced viewpoint of the people who are gonna get hit the hardest versus the definite excellence in education that we demand. I think we all have to take a step back and say, what can we live without? What do we absolutely need? And how do we go forward? I'm not gonna speak for Mr. O'Neill. I was in support of the 3% drop as a starting point. I'm very familiar with the process. I'm glad that Mr. Boyle and the school board met with Dr. Metzler and the budget administrator to come up with another number. That's what's supposed to happen. Great thing about America is we can have discourse. There are plenty of people in this room that I know personally and professionally I've had disagreements with. So I don't hold it against anybody. If you don't agree, you don't agree. But we need to make sure that we take into account every single constituent that lives in our four towns. Thank you.
Two areas that I think may deserve a look here. One is alternative and continuing education, which close to 200,000. And I, to be honest, I have not looked too deeply into this line, but it's kind of surprising to me in this day and age that is such a large expense for our district. The other is, and I am a musician, I play professionally. My twin sister is a professional musician. The PAC, I thought was supposed to be revenue neutral, but maybe I'm misreading this budget, but it appears that there's some cost associated with that. And I also know there was a new position added to the PAC, what, a year or two ago? Does anybody?
Last year.
Last year. So, I'm not trying to go, but I think those are, and that, this would be up to your committee, might take a look at those two areas in a little more detail. Another thing with the music program that I noticed, and I know it's offset by revenue, is private instruction. That number in terms of an expense tends to run much higher than the revenue, so I think that's a number that might be adjusted to be more reasonable. It should be almost offset by revenue, and it seems to be a little higher, so those are just my thoughts for the committee on a couple areas that I don't think have been looked at too closely.
So I can definitely speak to that. I don't have the historical perspective that Dr. Metzler and a lot of people in this room would have. And anyone who's been on the school board for any period of time, I believe that is a great area for discussion and for opinion, because I really think that it comes down to what the directives have been from the school board in the past with respect to the usage of that facility. Period. And that splits, you might be able to elaborate.
I've made it slightly more challenging because for the PAC to break even in a lot of ways. I mean, it operates a little upside down because we've made it available more to the community. So it's not that we just give it away, but we've done things to, they pay for, we reduced the rentals for some nonprofit groups and different things so that they could have access. But we've tried a number of different things. But you are right, that is an area where we've looked at, because I think at one time when it was built, people thought that it would raise enough money to run itself, and that's just not accurate. It's not accurate.
Thank you. Well, some of that is bringing in big names that don't pay for itself through ticket sales. So there's something that needs to be examined operationally there. It's not just because we're making it more available to the community. There's some operational things to explore there.
Yeah, it's a good point. If we bring in, I think to Mrs. Green's point, if we bring in a musician and we sell X amount of tickets and we operate at a loss because we have to pay the event, I think we don't go in hoping we're going to lose money. I don't think, but we need to do a better job. I think with maybe with pre-sales or something. I mean, that's not what I do. I don't run a business, so. But that's certainly something that we have to take a look at. That's another factor. It's not just the factor that I threw out there.
Well, and I think that has been looked at in terms of who we're bringing in, and that has been made more of a priority. And one of the issues that we run into is that if you have someone who would like to rent the facility for a period of time, let's say a weekend for a competition, cheerleading competition, or what have you, that weekend needs to be blocked off in its entirety in advance, which means that if we have someone who wants to use the facility from the community or from within our schools Saturday night, that takes that whole weekend off the plate, and we've lost that to another facility. And so if it's a priority, that it be revenue neutral or that it be, better than that, there are some trade-offs. And that, if that's a decision that comes from the school board, certainly that would
One
be
of
a good time to discuss it.
One of the things that the school board a few years ago, looking for the PAC schedule really early on, making sure that our kids had access to it. So we take all the dates for our kids, for our district, and then the rest is available to the public. So, because there were times when we couldn't get in our own PAC, because an outside group would have it. Like, say, for instance, we needed it if we thought for graduation on a Saturday, and some company would have it through the whole weekend. We were saying, no, we need to have the PAC because we use it for some seniors to go in and watch graduation on the screen, those sorts of things. So, they've been great about getting that calendar, you guys, and to the board, and you approve it in early to mid-September every year, so you can see, and that's worked out well, but it also limits the amount of times that we can rent it out, so.
And not by the nights that are impacted. Sometimes it's a program we can't have in as a result.
You've heard an awful lot from the right side of the school board. What about you folks on the left over here? You guys have any
I
questions?
don't know if Greg would like that.
Way over there on the left, Greg.
Yeah.
That's my
Way
left.
over on the left.
They're on the right, that's their left.
Can I speak? Mr.
Sure.
Burns? I wanted to go back to Mr. Hughes' point about the athletic accounts and the accounts for rentals. So I get the added fun from the school board of looking at all the bills every 2 weeks and seeing the invoices and making sure the POs match and that they're in the right accounts. And so I want to tell you my experience. Last year, I was going along and everything was matching up, and I was really feeling so proud of myself that things were good. And I got to a bill for ice time, and I was shocked at the price. Talk about sticker shock. And I did question, and I did speak to the athletic director, and he said, yeah, we're at their mercy. They have the rink, we don't. They tell us what we're going to pay. We don't get to negotiate very much. So you have to always have, and the same thing with the pool time. I think the pool is not quite, hasn't been quite as sticker shock. But the ice rink really was quite a bit higher. And after I swallowed that number and continued, the bill was correct. I was really afraid that they'd flipped a number, or I didn't think any of our staff would make that mistake, but it is pretty high. So having a little cushion for those added fun attractions of the rink charging us more for ice time is, I think, important to have, not cut it to the bare bone there.
And I was looking at historical,
Yeah.
so I would think that, if you go back even 3 years and you look, what we've typically done, I would think that would kind of be an average of what we do.
Right.
And so, we suddenly back last year, we jumped that up $20,000. And we haven't been spending that extra, 20 in the past. So, in order to keep that sport, because I didn't want to see that sport go.
No, neither do I.
We could, to reduce other areas. And I had questioned the athletic director when he was in here about some of the other fees that we have that are underspent during the year. And if we look historically, we spend less on those, but we budget higher on them. And I understand the whole idea is, if we have a great year, every team gets to the championship, we're going to spend all that. But historically, we don't see that happening. So in order to save some money, to keep other sports going too, and to try and help reduce this taxpayer burden without seriously impacting cuts of programs. That's where I was really looking at. When we look at the surplus, we do have a large number for surplus when we talk about it. Compared to the size of the budget, it might not seem like it's a large number, but when we're looking at $1.5 million of money we budgeted but didn't spend, there's stuff in there that we can move around without having to knock off $30,000 or $50,000.
I think if you went into your individual towns and asked them how much surplus they had, I know what the number was in Plastow, and it was very, very close.
Yep.
we couldn't quite, we weren't as fluid, Plastow wasn't as fluid as they would have liked to have been. I'm sure other communities might have been that close, and maybe some had way more cushion than that. But it's kind of scary. It's like going on a trip. Rick Blair, school board member I dearly love and dearly miss, he would say to you, it's like going on a cross-country trip and forgetting to plan for, oops, you had a flat tire and you had to buy a tire in Minnesota. You gotta have a little money just in case. You don't wanna come back with only a quarter in your pocket. And that's what I feel like. I think $1.5 million is like having a quarter in your pocket when you're looking at $72 million.
But also with the surplus, the numbers that they have at the local level, at a town, it's also for cash flow. Because as we were talking about earlier about the year-to-date expenditures, those are good metrics to use, but budgets don't spend linearly. You could turn around and have something preloaded right after the start of the year, and you pay all this stuff, and then all of a sudden, you know, geez, we spent 20% of our budget in the first 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But then you don't spend anything for the next couple of months on that. So it's, you gotta take stuff with a, you know, to get inside of it. But one of the things that this district does have an advantage that the towns do not have is they have 4 customers that pay monthly. At a town, all 4 towns get 2 infusions, July and December. So that's one of the things that you have to turn around inside of a surplus, is you're using that as a cash flow to pay for your operations as you're going along and operating the business.
Remember, this budget is almost 22 months out compared to, you know, you at the local level that are playing, you know, in 4 hours, it'll be December 1st here. And you know where you're at because your next budget starts January 1st. We're budgeting now, hello, it's December 1st, but we got a lot of months to go yet. So it's tough. I don't envy any of us. It's really hard.
No, the easiest
Lens is very
position for
difficult.
both boards would be to turn around here and just spend a lot of money. But then what it's gonna happen is we're not gonna be here that long because we're gonna be revolted. Because when people get those tax bills, they're gonna turn around and have even bigger pitchforks and more tar and more feathers for us. We have to turn around here and we're gonna debate. We turn around and we just turned around and from earlier today, there's an extra $1 million that the school board has recommended. Now we're gonna turn around and maybe we're gonna turn around and debate who's gonna get a piece of that pie. Is Mr. Henderson gonna go over here and his $218,000 fiber optic project is gonna get that? Somebody else is gonna want a piece of that. So we're always competing for the same limited resource, and that's the taxpayer dollar. There's only so much of them, and we got Uncle Sam, we got the state level, we got the local level, all competing for that, and there's only so much you can get.
Dissatisfied.
Greg Sparrow, Atkinson School Board, that's okay. People out there have to hear you. Well, Sue did it, so I have to get into it. So, there's four different communities with all different personalities, and we're all trying to get to a point where I differ a little bit from the superintendent, where I'm not looking for the appetite of the communities, what they can handle for a budget. I'm looking for a responsible budget. And when I say that, 22 months out with my colleague, with what Sue Sherman said, there could be a depression, there could be an economic collapse in this country. We don't know what could happen to, that far out. So right now, as the economy looks like it's on the way up, we could sit here and say, well, the appetite now could be, let's raise the budget 4%, we can handle that now, but we don't know what could happen, that far out. So to me, I think everyone in here is working very hard. I know how many hours everyone's putting in, especially the chairman on both committees, and so to me, I think I seconded, I seconded Sue's motion to just look at a third draft, which is $70,599,955, which I think, we'll look at that, let's see where that comes in. And maybe with all the discussion that we had tonight, maybe some of those ideas could be rolled into that third draft. And maybe that'll look a little bit differently than what we saw for the big, I guess people call it catastrophic cuts. So I do think that it would be great to have that draft come in and kind of look at it again when that's available. But I do think Jim Hall nailed it, where I'm hearing it from both sides of my community, back in Atkinson, where there are people, a lot of citizens at home just looking to save every penny. And if we can, honestly, if I can look them in the eye and say, you know, we did everything possible, cut this budget without hurting the students, without hurting the teachers, without, you know, kind of being responsible. So if something does happen in the economy, you know, we're not, you know, we did everything we could to kind of keep this budget in line and where people can afford it. That's where I come in.
Yes.
Thank you. I just want to kind of reiterate something that Greg just said, or pointed out to the board, to the budget committee members who didn't attend the school board meeting. The school board did not vote to endorse a 70 million and change budget. The school board voted, okay, the motion was made, Greg seconded it, and the school board voted to ask Dr. Metzler to see what would the effects of that be. That is not the same as saying we endorse that as a final budget. So please bear that in mind.
I guess I'm the only one that hasn't spoke yet. Kelly Ward, Sandown. I've been on the school board for quite a while, and I've seen this process. I know, to Eileen Doobie's point, this part of the process was definitely created for us to work and tell the budget committee what our priorities were. That's how it was created when we first did that. That was the intention. So that we necessarily wouldn't be throwing numbers back and forth with, well, we like this number, and that's your job to do that number. So we would come forward and say, these are the things that mean the most to us. This is where we need to be to make everything work. And then we could look at the number that you give us and find a way to make that work with that number. I've seen that work. Not quite as contentious as it does right now. You know, to go on record saying I am in favor of a responsible budget. I don't think that spending crazy is what's going on here. I think you guys do a great job putting a budget together, and I think the administration does a wonderful job coming back with surplus. They're not just spending every dime you give them. So the fact that they can return a surplus and get our children educated and not cut programs and not lose teachers, I think they're doing a great job. So I think we should move forward from this and, you know, maybe hammer out exactly how we are to work together collaboratively and have some sort of a process that we can all honor going forward, so that no matter who's on these boards, that we know kind of what we're getting into and where we're going to be sitting.
You're the winner.
Any other comments from the budget committee? Questions, concerns? We've been meeting now for about an hour and 10 minutes. If there's no other issues, I'd like to close this part of the budget committee meeting. I want to thank you all for attending. Have patience with us. We're working through it as best we can. We appreciate your input. And I also want to thank the folks that came, to listen, to share, to think about what's been discussed. I hope you all can come to both the public hearing on January 11th and the deliberative on February 5th. Of course, my email is published, and you can send comments to me at any time. Yes.
I recommend that you, if you're done, take a short recess so that people can.
Yes, I was going to say, I'm going to make the recommendation that we take a 10-minute recess, allow folks to file out, and we'll return, go back to the regular official business meeting of the budget committee. Thank you all.
Thank you.
We have a trap too. Is that in here?
David, we could almost make 8:45.
you, brother? I think I did too.
The minutes for November 21. Sean, we are reviewing minutes. Yes, ma'am.
Under the delegations and individuals section, the second to last sentence referencing the conversation we had with Mr. Boyle talking about the school board polling for a 3% reduction, the operating budget, and it wasn't actually a vote of 5 to 4. My understanding is that there was a poll and that the board's understanding was it was a majority, but I don't believe that that is actually.
I agree with that. I actually have it written on mine that I was gonna be doing it. It was actually, I'd like to change that from, just change the word vote to polling of the board.
And I think that my understanding now, I did not go back to verify this, but we should probably confirm, is it wasn't a 5-4, but it was like a 3-3-3 or something like that. There were people who abstained, I believe, so we should confirm that.
But Mr. Boyle reported it as a 5-4.
Right.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough.
Based on what.
He could have said
But it should
monkeys were
say-
flying, and we'd have to put it in the minutes, because that's what he said, I mean,
Yeah.
so.
But he did not say that.
No,
just
no,
for the
no,
record.
no, but I'm just saying that these are minutes reflective of
Fair
what
enough.
he had said.
Fair enough.
So if he did say the word vote, which I think he did, it should be reflected that way in the minutes. Do you see what I'm saying? Because it's what he said.
Okay, then I take it back.
Sean, you look confused now.
O'Neill, do you have you wanna make a, still wanna
Yeah, I would like to make a
correction?
motion to change vote to polling of the board.
Is there a second?
I'll second it for discussion. Why
Okay. It's been moved and second, discussion point, yes.
don't we do both? Put in what was said, and then to Mr. O'Neill's point, but this was actually a poll or something like that. Can we incorporate both? So
With
somebody.
parentheses.
Yes,
was
with parentheses.
actually a
Well, I think
poll.
he did say it was a vote at one time.
That's my point.
Understood, but to the person reading the minutes, so they understand the full scope of what.
So it actually was a poll.
Right, right. You could put, I guess I'd be all right with putting it in parentheses saying actually a poll, you know?
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Because I did
you
actually
feel,
watch it.
I'm fine with that. I just, it wasn't a direct vote. There wasn't a motion, a second, and then that was it. It was a
so-
discussion that came around there, and I've done that with selectmen's meetings. We'll have a consensus of the board and not take a vote on something, but in the end, it's reflected in the minutes what the decision was.
What's what's the statement you wanna put in parentheses?
I was just looking to change vote to polling of the board. That's what I was, but I will entertain another.
Is that
Well, I mean, I don't want to amend it. If I amend it, it's gonna change your whole thing.
Well, what are you looking to write?
Just to put it in parentheses that it was actually a poll, not changing the word vote at all.
Correct.
And I
just
think you're right,
putting
I
in
think he did
parentheses.
say it as a.
Because
it was
Right,
a-
he said
apparently
it,
that's what
so.
he said.
That's why I don't wanna change that, because he said it.
I know he was also talking about polling of the board too.
And it's in the beginning where he says poll of those minutes.
Could we put in there?
Vote/poll.
Yeah.
There you go.
A parentheses slash, just,
Yeah.
however you feel comfortable.
Unofficial. Yeah.
So I would change my motion to turn around and to add /poll after the word vote.
Right.
And
Just second that.
so then, would you agree to the second that
Yes.
you've already had?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other changes to the?
We need to act on this, though, right? That's a motion, so we gotta.
We have a motion, but we'll vote it, we'll just include it in the vote of the minutes. Are there any other changes?
No, I have not.
Then I make a motion that we accept the minutes of November 21st as amended.
Good.
All in favor? It's unanimous. And one abstention. All right. I guess the next thing is to discuss draft 2 of the budget. this draft was voted last time, 6-4 by this committee. As a starting point. You know, it's been expressed to me, and I support that, because there's some concerns about that. Concerns were that it was derived from a calculation based on a budget versus actual spending in Senate 17. That, according to the superintendent, is in fact a lot less than 2 million. That was, to me, that presents a risk. Presents a risk in the sense that we may, if there's any kind of unusual expenses, costs that come up, we may run into a situation where we won't have the money to finish the year. There's also some variables that haven't been factored in. We are going to be in negotiations for a new transportation budget. And numbers I've heard bounced around is 18 to 20% increase. Thirdly, we really need, one of the things I learned in getting all of the emails that I read, see whether a person was in favor of the high number or in favor of the low number or anything in between. The one thread through most of the emails was that they wanted us to roll up our sleeves and seriously vet the budget and look at the items as they're being spent or offered, or recommended or asked for. And we really haven't done that. We've done it a little bit on individual budgets, but we've never done it on the main overall budget. And although the school committee is recommending a $1 million increment over draft 2, it's still a bottom line number, and we still haven't vetted whether that's gonna be sufficient or not. If there's gonna be a surplus. What, yes?
So, maybe I'm speaking out of turn here. Jeff, are you under the understanding after the school board meeting that you are to come up with draft number 3 based on their recommendation?
No.
So it's gotta come from this body?
Correct.
That's right.
Can you repeat that again?
There was, I asked him if he needed to prepare draft 3 based upon the school board's recommendation.
The answer is yes.
That's what I wanted to get at. I think we have some misperceptions here that I want to clear up one. State law is pretty clear that we, as a budget committee, are not to do line item vetoes based upon what's presented to us. Okay, I don't want to do his job. That's a tough enough job. What we need to do is come out with a philosophy of, and I believe the board has now given us some meat and potatoes. Okay, they're ready to support $1 million going back. The first question in my mind is, are we willing, based upon Sean's previous motion at the last meeting, are we willing to go and do the same thing and work in concert? That's the next starting point. Because right now, as far as I'm concerned, we're still in our draft 2
That's our
with
working document.
with our recommendation from the board.
That's our working document.
Okay, so I want to make sure that we don't make more work for him going to, and I don't want to cut hairs here. The bottom line is, if it's 1.1 increase and it's now draft 3, and that's the motion we make,
Yeah, but we still have to look at it, and we took that number under.
David, I understand that, but my concern is that we're going to be kind of like a hamster in one of those wheels, running around, trying to chase our goal, which is to give Jeff and the superintendent acceptable number from this board that all of us can live with, that we think is not going to have a huge impact on our tax base, that's not gonna harm the education for our kids. That's all I'm trying to bring out.
Right, so I'm in agreement there. The school board made a motion to have the superintendent go do a draft for them at 70.6.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand that's for them, but
we can.
we can do what we want.
We, Jeff could draft it, deliver it to the school board, he could present it to us, we could crumble it up and put it in the recycling bin.
That's my point.
And I'm not saying that we would do that, but it's their directive doesn't impact our work.
Okay.
What I was getting at is, what I'd like to do is propose our own draft number 3. And then Jeff would create from that proposal, if people agree, a new full budget, that bottom line, a summary sheet of the cuts and the changes, and an updated CIP list based on what was recommended. I'm prepared to make a motion that we go to, that our draft 3 be 72,200,200,000, which is 0.6% increase over the current operating budget.
Can you repeat the number again?
0.
No, the 72.
72,200,000.
72,200?
And that would create a new working document for our next meeting where we could find places to responsibly cut and change. And I suspect when we were through, we would get much closer to the number that they came at. But I want this to go through, I want us to be able to say, because that was the thread of all of the messages that I've seen and other input verbally I've gotten. They want us to look at and sharpen, roll up our sleeves and sharpen our pencils and make appropriate changes to come up with a budget that will meet the fundamental requirement of balance between the needs for education and the needs of the taxpayer.
Clarification? Sorry, is that okay? Just clarification, you're saying for our next draft that we would then work through
That's
and continue to adjust accordingly?
That's right.
Just want to make sure I was clear on that, thank you.
So my question to you, Mr. Chairman, is, because I'm just trying to understand where everybody's coming up with these numbers. So where did you come up with 72 to?
And basically, I saw 5.5, we had a high number of 75 and some change.
Sure, okay.
And a low number of 69 and some change.
Yep.
Okay, and I just split the difference.
Got it, okay. So I'm just going over here, so, sounds like we're dealing with a bunch of numbers that are,
By doing this allows us to, we would have, I'm gonna ask Mr. Dowd, would you be able to present, if this was approved, a full budget, full line item budget, a summary sheet of cuts and changes, and a revised CIP by, say, tomorrow afternoon or Monday?
Yeah, probably if I can get time with the superintendent. Yeah.
So that would give us, and that would be made available within the next couple of business days. And I'm going to ask you all to take that, review it, bleed over it, mark it up, and we will do, through motions, make appropriate changes.
I'd like to comment that says that you were at the school board meeting earlier, and the 72,600,000 that was presented by Mr. Bielo actually failed. But now you're coming in here and roughly the same number that he's using, and you're turning around and parsing that. So
the difference with it is that his was a recommendation, would have had the authority of making a recommendation from the board, from the school board to
Correct.
us. What I'm saying is,
At
use
this
this as
point,
a,
yours is just a recommendation.
mine is a starting point where, from which we can have a legitimate, we can have numbers to which we can look at. We can evaluate actual requested money for a given item versus history. We can look at another item and say, why do they need that? And vet it the way it should be based on a 111, because that's what the voters, what the commenters were telling us to do.
That's not what I was getting, David. I was getting a lot of support for the number we have.
I realize, and I got a lot of support for the number, for a higher number. Let me respond to
There
him.
we differ.
And I'm talking about the process.
Well, the process I'm talking about, if you wanna look at, we wanna break the budget down, we start at the 69,599, and we can add on to that if we deem necessary, and that's the way we should be going. To keep banging numbers out there that we could.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. So if you think Mr. Chairman, if you think your motion's gonna carry, by all means, put it out here to be evaluated. If you're gonna make that motion, by all means, go ahead and make it, and we'll debate it, and we'll vote on it accordingly, and then we'll know where everybody stands.
Just, I'll give my 2 cents. So, now that I understand your thought process, you took the average of the two. To me, that doesn't cut it, because they could have, that number that we saw, that 75, it was a wish list.
Exactly.
So you took half of.
Well, that was part of, that was part of the discussion.
Here's my suggestion, make a motion, then that'll just answer all the questions.
Okay? Make a motion that the third draft of the budget, third working draft of the budget, be set at a bottom line of $72,200,000.
I'll second that for discussion.
So here's my problem with starting low at 69. How do you know how many admins to add back in? Teachers, interventionalists, FICA, retirement. I mean, we don't know that. We can't say that.
Correct.
So that's my problem with starting this low. That is that we don't know what to add in. With that, I mean, we can add in other stuff, absolutely. That's fine. But when it comes to the people, we have no idea what we're doing when it comes to that.
So I'm inclined to vote when we're ready in favor of the motion, but I'm not in favor of supporting that as a final number. So over the course of 4 days, I've received 86 phone calls and or emails, so 86 total contacts from residents in Sandown. Overwhelmingly, exact count, 66 Sandown residents who reached out to me said, we do not want a budget higher than the current operating budget. Loud and clear, to the point where I had an absolutely heartbreaking call from a woman who is on critical medication, who's gotta make a decision this month. Is she gonna let a lien be placed on her house for delinquent taxes? Or is she gonna get her medications? So I'm telling you right now, from a Sandown representative standpoint, I'm not gonna be able to vote in any budget larger than this year's current operating budget.
I'll do you one better. My mother-in-law, who I've known for 31 years, has owned a property in Atkinson since 1954, has been religiously paying her taxes. My afternoon was not worrying about this meeting. My worry was to walk her through application for VA benefits, so her deceased husband's benefits could be gotten for her pharmaceuticals. So she can go get a prescription and pay a copay versus taking out of pocket, and this is not a lie, nearly $1,000 a month. She only has Social Security. I don't know how everybody feels about that, but when I sat down with my mother-in-law this afternoon, I'm going, whoa, time out here. This is reality. I can't support, I mean, Sean and I didn't even talk about it before he made the motion. My attitude right now is, I don't want to see our academic program suffer. However, our charge, in my own opinion, and I may be wrong legally, Jeff can correct me if you will, we need to decide what is a responsible budget going forward. The board doesn't like our bottom line number. I can accept that. I'm into feedback. I love what you just said. But I also know there's a contractual obligations, and where's the money coming from? That's what I would like to know. If we stayed with $71 million for next year, where are those cuts specifically? Because I can go through the spreadsheets and guess where they are, but I don't know. That's his degree, not me. I'm a volunteer. You're a volunteer. Sean's a volunteer. That we need direction from not only Jeff, in my opinion, Mr. Dowd, but Dr. Metzler. What does he want to see? I know he said 55.
You said 72.8. This would be the opportunity to do that.
I know that, but is he willing to go below 72.8 in order to have this board vote unanimously to present a budget to the people at public hearing? That's my concern.
I understand that. I just want to be clear that this is a starting point.
The starting point was last time.
Yeah, we have the starting point.
We're now into step 2.
No, the thing is, and go back to what was just said before, how do we go up?
Same way you go down.
And I
Subtract
think
here.
it's easier for us to go down, and what I was gonna ask Mr. Doobie, what number did you want to see on my proposal?
Yeah.
I'm fine with your proposal to go and look at, but I cannot vote in in favor of a final budget that exceeds this year's operating budget, so 71,759.
Okay, so you would you suggest as a starting point for version 3, 72 even?
Again, I can support it,
But
when we get to that final
But
number.
then we would have to go and responsibly bring it down to the number. And I contend that the way if we do it right, if we do go through the process, because that's what we did last year. We went through the process and we cut a whole bunch of money over the course and brought that budget down from a 4% increment to a 1% increment. And I don't see why we could not do that again. And we would probably come in very close to what.
We can do the same thing with the
recommended by-
69 million.
Hold on.
No, I was actually first, Michael. And last year's number was not done by breaking the numbers down and all this and getting the nuts and bolts. We had a gentleman here pick up and pull a number, and said whatever number he pulled out, we all voted on, that was the number we went to. And that was
Right,
it.
and then we used that, from that point.
I don't
we-
recall that. I think we
Yes.
kind of stayed with that number, to be honest with you.
Lee, you can deal with it because you were the chair. Didn't we go through 3 iterations of cuts, including right after the public hearing?
Yeah, I believe there were 3 iterations, and then we removed another 200,000.
Yeah.
Because we realized it was, so.
Yeah, we went through that, and that's basically what I want to do again.
So,
Mr. Chair?
Is to go through that. Yes, ma'am.
So I'm very much in support of going forward, starting point of 72. And the reason that I'm in support of that is I think that gives us a little visibility into some of the places where we can do some optimizing. And I suspect that's why that's been done in the past, handed down. So I very much hear the stories, they are real. No doubt about that.
Absolutely.
Why would we doubt it? No question. People are hurting, and we're actually in a really bad situation in New Hampshire because we're so dependent on property taxes, and that's actually the real issue, and we're having to deal with it here and do our best. But I think to get the clarity and visibility into making smart recommendations on this rather than random, is to start here and then say, these are the places that make sense to start tweaking. So I'm very much in support of the 72 and as the next draft.
Do you want to make an amendment to my motion?
I just had one other comment. I do appreciate the mindset of, you know, what you're proposing and what you were just discussing. But I have an issue with the number because I feel like it's not really a real number.
The
I
72?
I would really like to see a start at, you know, what's the fixed number, what are our fixed costs that are, you know, not negotiable, that we're going to have, estimate with the transportation contract up or whatever, and we should be working off of that number instead of an arbitrary number. I don't know if I'm missing something here.
I think ultimately that's where we get with doing that. I think that's a valid point.
Here's what I think we should do. We have a motion on the floor. Let's vote, and then we'll either move with it or we'll start off somebody else's recommendation. My point would be, I'd like to start where we were and build up.
So I'm gonna make a motion to call the question.
Thank
So let's vote on it. I mean, it seems like we've come to the end of our discussion.
Okay. You read the motion, please?
Motion that the third working draft of the proposed 18-19 budget be set at a bottom line of 72.2 million.
Okay, all in favor? One, two, three, four. Opposed? 6, okay. All right, what do you want to do? Now, there's a real problem with starting at a low number and building up, as was mentioned before.
Well, I don't know, I don't see the difference.
I agree with
There
that.
is no difference, David.
It's just simple math. Either
It's
you
just, I
add
mean, you might feel
numbers-
better going home tonight thinking we got 72 million in the budget, but we don't have 69.6 either. We have neither, but we need to, I think we need.
You could have
further-
67 coming out of
Yeah, we don't have that either. We know, I think we need to go up perhaps. I mean, I'm willing to go, I mean, look at the numbers. But the budget that he gave, that Mr. Metzler gave us, I think is kind of silly. He even said it himself. He just arbitrarily picked $50,000. So, I mean, come on. So that we can't look at that number and start from that. So let's get a realistic budget that they've looked over, not done over the weekend, and something actually, you know, we can look at the real numbers. The school board also mentioned that we're gonna lose teachers through attrition. So that scare tactic doesn't work. So, I mean, so where are we? So we don't know. We still don't know where we are.
But what we can do with the starting point is go back to Mr. Dowd and Dr. Metzler and say, starting at this number, give me your, like, 5 biggest things that you might need us to consider, right? And so we can build, like you said, you can just build up from there. So we're not looking at 100 different things. They can prioritize. I'm not saying 5, but they can give us a list and say, these are the things that are extremely important to us. We better not touch them, and we need to add them back in. And that's how we go. And so if they got, like, for instance, the lawn sweeper on the fields that we might not want, right, Julie? Then we can prioritize it and say, you know, something important or not so important. But it's all possible. We just go to them and say, again, we can't do this.
I think you said something about that number. I want to know what that number is.
Well, right now, we're back at that number which we had last week.
Yeah. And we're going up.
Right. That's what we have to, this motion didn't carry, so now we're back to the motion that Mr. O'Neill made last week, which was 69,599. And so my point is, look, we can make it, you know, 69,599 or 601. I can add pennies to it, but just, it's a starting point. It's an arbitrary number. It's a starting point. We give it to our professionals, our administrators, and we say, here's what we're, show us what, again, some kind of priority list with some kind of guidance that says, give us your priorities and don't exceed, and again, pick a number, because if you say, give me your priorities, and they get us back up to 75, well, we really didn't get anywhere. But you can say, give us our priorities,
Could the upper limit be?
and you
be
pick some
the
kind of
current-
upper
but
limit.
The upper limit could be the current budget.
It could be 72, but at least we have something to look at and compare on a magnitude on a priority list.
So, to Michael's point, you know, one of the things that came out of draft 2 here was a large representation of teaching positions and faculty cut. What I'd like to know, it's gonna come out a little callous, how many of those positions are actual warm bodies versus budgeted positions that are not filled, open requisitions? So what's that number represent out of the total cuts?
So if you look at, I can give you a rough idea on that now. I might have to borrow,
Can you tell us what document we're gonna go off of?
should be right off the cut sheet.
No, we didn't get, so there was that summary sheet that had all the cuts on it.
Yeah, but it's not in the packet.
It's not in our packet.
It's not in our
You're kidding me.
packet.
Wait a minute. No, right there. Isn't that right there?
No, well, this is just a summary of draft one.
Major
and two.
factors over 25K, Jeff. We did not
The one that
have-
came in the email is not in our packet.
The draft 2 summary is what, we didn't get that, and that's a 2 sheet with the summary.
That
and
one.
all the cuts.
That
The major factors, this?
The one he just pulled out.
Oh.
So can I, point of order,
He was
just,
studious.
Mr.
He
Chairman,
did
point of
his.
order? Um,
See that one?
I try not to go on SharePoint because I have enough emails going at one time. Can we have a standard, if it's going to come out, that it's gonna be put on SharePoint? I don't have a problem printing it out. But the last 2 sets of documents, 3 sets of documents, I printed out before the meeting was via email. So I would appreciate doing it one way or the other, or when it's ahead of time via email, that you're gonna do it this way this time. Because I was blindsided. I called Mr. Mascola this morning. I said, what are we talking about? I've seen it on Facebook. How did it get to Facebook? I thought a public consumption of our work, along with the superintendent and the business administrator, was supposed to stay confidential until we had a chance to look at it. That's just my own
I couldn't
opinion.
find this on SharePoint.
I'm just saying, what I'm trying to get at.
No, I know your point. I know.
For discussion, as a point of order for this budget committee, we're on 2 planes right now, and they're not converging very well as far as information.
Maybe
Can we-
3 planes.
Excuse me?
Maybe 3 planes.
Right, well, maybe multiple, I don't know. Can we decide tonight, I would like to make a motion that all of the correspondence come through via email,
Second.
not SharePoint. That way I know it's coming. Either that or ping my email and say, look at SharePoint. You
So-
can't have it both ways.
Wait, you said all correspondence? You're talking about emails, or are you talking about?
We already get the correspondence, Dan. What I'm trying to say is, until my wife showed me on Tuesday night on Facebook, draft number 2, I was
Know
blindsided.
that it was there.
No, I
Correct.
agree with that.
And I'm a little ticked off about it. I gotta be
No,
honest.
I understand that, I understand that.
But, well, let me just tell you what we did before. Is when documents were posted to SharePoint, the board would get an email, because maybe somebody, that would just say, you have new documents on SharePoint. That way you don't get bombarded with huge attachments, maybe if you're on your phone. But either way,
I'm okay with that. Like I said, I agree, we were blind, we wouldn't even know that there was a new budget. If it wasn't for out in Facebook land, we would've never knew it came on out.
Yeah.
That's wrong.
So-
We should be getting a correspondence to say, from Jeff that says, there's a new document up there, here it is, and it was late at night. It was already on Facebook, so.
I'll further amplify my point. The people who are here tonight and people who are still here, they don't bother me. What bothers me is being ignorant when somebody calls and asks a question.
Yeah.
I have to go and call somebody else's on this budget committee?
I found it on Facebook too.
And that's my point, folks. This is supposed to be a professional committee of the
All
school
right,
district.
but I think it's a simple solution if we can just do this. And
There's also a setting in SharePoint that you can be alerted to any documents that are uploaded. So you could, I'm just saying, if you never want to get hit by that again, you can set that yourself, but I was dismayed that there wasn't a communication out at all, even up to this point.
Yeah, there wasn't a SharePoint. I'm enrolled in the alerts. I didn't get a SharePoint.
So that way, an email is the best. Just
That's
send
what
an
I'm
email that
recommending.
says, There are new documents for you to view on SharePoint.
Thank you.
PDF them, because it's small.
Well, I
Then
mean,
it's
if it doesn't go through, it doesn't go through. There's nothing I can do about it. That's not my problem. But, so, as a general proposition, when I send emails out, and those emails say, and I hope you're getting them, because I know we talked about your email address, right? And I think I updated yours.
All right, so you're saying that you send out an email saying, I have Rev 2 of the draft, and it's out on SharePoint, here's a link.
No, as a general proposition, prior to that, okay, so when we're going through and documents are updated, agenda items are out there, I'm sending an email out that says, such and such is out there, here's a link. The agenda has been posted, here it is.
Yes.
Exactly.
Materials are there, here it is.
Yes, I get
Yes.
those.
This is out, this is there.
Yes.
No, it didn't happen for this second draft.
Correct.
And that's my bet.
That's fine.
Now,
Apology accepted, by the way.
separate, and you can appreciate that it was a rather hectic weekend.
Uh-huh.
In addition to that, I did not have a full package to put out there. Now, all that said, we have one side over here who, when things are posted to SharePoint, I have no issue with this board seeing them first. That's why we have logins for SharePoint. We had talked about earlier, to your point, I think, when the documents are out there, they're accessible. There may be documents, different things that we may have as a committee that we just see through login credentials. But anything that's presented to this committee through SharePoint is available to the public.
Transparent.
Figure it out. I don't care. Tell me what you want me to do. I don't care.
I think I already made a motion, that the link comes through the email. It's the simplest for me, and I don't know how other people
No,
feel.
is that document a public document?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's
I
public,
think-
I'll agree on that.
I think Paul said he was blindsided, he didn't, wasn't aware it was there, so that's the.
So I think, Jeff, yes, to answer your question, it is.
It's okay that it's public.
Yep.
Okay,
It is what it is.
You made a motion.
Yep.
Has it
Seconded
been
by Mr. O'Neill.
Seconded by me.
Oh, okay.
Okay, let's move the question. All in favor of the,
You wanna read it?
Can we read back the motion just to be on the safe side?
That all uploads to SharePoint have a corresponding email correspondence to budget committee members.
Perfect.
Indicating that the documents have been uploaded.
Okay, all in favor? Would you, all opposed?
I'm abstaining. I'm impartial to it.
Okay,
I get the alerts.
so we have,
I do too, that's.
We don't.
Did you get an alert on Sunday?
9 yes, 1 abstention.
Now we can
I
move
assume
on.
everyone knows when a document's uploaded. It's when the whole package is out there that you can send it out.
Now we're back to where do we start?
So,
Okay.
Let me go upstairs
may
and
I,
grab the copies.
feeding off of what Mr. Mascola had suggested with regard to a prioritized list, which no one's gonna be surprised.
That's what you've been saying all the time. It's even drumming that.
Yeah, I really like that idea.
Yeah.
So, how about we start with where we're at with the current draft number, the 69 whatever, and have that prioritized list up to the 72, and then we can have conversations around that part. Let's make that be the range.
Well, I think I speak to the other point, if we go to the fixed cost, I'd rather go to the fixed cost.
First.
Start the fixed cost there, and then do the prioritize, and the things we have to prioritize from there.
We would not deal with, what we would discuss would be not the contractual,
Yeah, obviously, insurance.
state mandated stuff.
Right, but we still could have a discussion if there was the summary page that we didn't get, as far as the number of teachers, the number of administrators.
Coming hot off the press.
Present,
It's right off the press.
that we would
The
be
public
able to
has it.
speak intelligently
What's the second side?
when we decide to say, well, we don't want to cut those, or we don't want to cut these. I can't have I had an intelligent conversation during the break with Don Woodworth, and he goes, that's a great idea, but I'm not going to share it tonight. I've shared it with Mike in the offering and a phone call, but I can't bring it to this body because I didn't have this. And if we have the priorities, as Eileen and Mr. Muscola are talking about, now I can make an educated recommendation on perhaps that would end up in the school board, because Dan's here, that maybe we need to be more efficient and look at certain cuts that would eliminate
Okay,
certain
so
positions.
If we start out at the 69, 69.6, with an upper limit of, just picking, 70.
Well, we don't need an upper limit.
Don't need an upper level.
No upper limit. You
no.
don't want an upper limit.
Well, I mean,
I
I
can
think
only
we've
speak
already
from-
established you don't want, sorry, go ahead, Paul.
Here's the difficulty when you have an upper level threshold. Let's say this body says, you know what, Jim, that's a great idea. This is how we should do special ed. Now we have to go to the board to see if it's allowable under their policies and procedures and bring back the special ed coordinator. I have some ideas that used to be my forte. I never had a due process hearing in 15 years as administrator. I'm not saying I know everything, but I know special ed law, and there are certain processes and procedures that as a district, maybe we need to look at the breakdown. Maybe we don't need as many personnel, but how we schedule things may be more efficient and effective to save us money in the bottom line of the budget. That's all I'm saying.
What you're recommending then, before we make a motion, is that we have a draft 2 as a starting point,
Correct.
and we go through, we all have copies of the line items for draft 2.
Right.
We go through that over the next 2 weeks.
And I'm not trying to make this into a motion or be difficult. I would go back to Mr. Muscola and Mrs. Doobie, that the things that are in this table are meaningless unless there's a prioritized number next to it. In other words, category A, these are things that, in our opinion, are going to injure the academic performance of our students if we don't have it. Let's say it's 800 grand, so all of a sudden,
That's the one missing piece then.
yeah, because this is, we're now talking dollars, but we're not talking cents. And I'm not talking about the CEWS cents and the yes
Fairly
cents.
quickly.
So what are we looking to create? Are we looking to create a
We
listing?
want
of-
you to set up, look at all of these concepts.
Yep,
We prioritize them.
okay.
If you could add them back in.
To add them back in, Jeff.
Yeah.
In other words, not making it a wish
Priority,
list,
priority.
prioritize it so we have something to chew on.
So,
Biggest one will be-
I'm gonna change my view. I don't think we should put an upper limit.
Yep.
Because as we're looking at these prioritizing, this list, we may say, you know something? These things are so important to us, they need to get put back in. And if we said just cap it at this, we might be missing things. So leave it out, but keep in mind, I would say keep in mind that when you're making, actually, I don't think you have to. We don't want to go back up to 75.
No, and we want to try to keep it as
But I think that'll be fine, because if Jeff prioritizes, we'll get the same result.
So now that we have this, can we go down the list really quickly? So,
Could I just, as we go down, do you want to decide if we want to say, no, we definitely don't want that back in as we go down the list?
I'm just gonna focus, John, on the human head
Oh,
counts.
perfect. That's the first place to start.
Okay, so we have 25 TTA, lay off approximately 50. The approximate 50, are those true 50 warm bodies in active positions today, or are there 30 warm bodies and 20 open requisitions?
As I understand the TTA and TSSU positions, as of right now, I believe that everything that is in the budget is either filled or posted to be filled.
Okay, so how many of those are filled versus posted?
To be filled.
I don't have an exact number on the
So,
breakdown.
could we get a number on those two?
Sure.
Lee,
Yeah.
before you go on,
Yep.
can you just explain that line? Why is it 25 and then a 50?
It really depends on how
they're used. It's FTE versus.
Oh, okay.
And some of the, yes, in order to get the savings that they're talking about, they have to do,
Full-time equivalents?
they have to do full-time equivalents and basically build
Okay.
2 people rather than 1.
Got it, okay.
And if you factor in a certain dollar amount and you end up keeping someone who's much greater than that dollar amount, to get to that dollar amount at a lower level costs
Okay.
more.
The 4 interventionists.
These are easy.
And
Those are all proposed.
Those are all proposed.
Simple, done.
Okay, and now the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 admin lines. This confuses me. Are those individual admins? But then in parentheses, we have the 11.5 total.
What does that mean?
Yeah. That was
Yeah, I was like 11.5, but is it one of those full-time equivalent things? or just the
No.
same?
What that is that we have administrators, some of whom are in the same account code,
Mhm.
some of whom are different account codes. And so as a result of that, I have an admin category that contemplates 11 and a half positions in total.
So those 7
Think
lines
of it-
are 11 and a half positions.
Positions.
Got it.
Think of it that way, I think, instead.
And they're
All right.
all existing filled
No.
positions.
No, there are, I can't speak to all of them.
Because we have a vacancy right now in the SAU.
But this isn't SAU.
It's district.
Yeah, this is.
The vacancy is district or SAU.
Do have one vacancy.
But that's a district employee.
No, they're SAU.
No. We have one vacancy in district in one of the positions, and 2 of the others are the academic dean positions, which have not been filled.
So,
So
I'm
are
sorry,
those
how many?
2 on here, right here, out of these?
11 and a half.
So these 8 that are already here, which 2 of those are the deans at the school board already?
They're not, out of the 8 that are there, the
Right here.
the account, I'd have to come back and
what's real, what's
pinpoint exactly which accounts they work, because those are split positions.
Yeah, so those 8 lines, Sean, actually represent 11 and a half total.
Yeah, I understand that, but
So-
if the school board took out 2 deans, this would be 2 full-time equivalents, correct?
Correct.
So that number would be 9.5.
And if they're not here, that means that they're in the current operating budget that's already there, and the school board removed those positions. So that salary that is being paid for by those 2 deans,
They're not there.
they're not there. So that's actually a reduction that would even increase the savings, those 2 salary line items, plus FICA and benefits.
Correct.
So there's the 2 deans plus an open position.
Correct. That much I know.
Three
Okay,
positions.
so this 11.5 is actually 8.5 warm bodies in seats performing work today.
Correct.
Okay. So 8.5. So here's where I'm ultimately going with this is I'd like to see the 8.5 added back into the budget, and I'd like to see of the 70 employees combined TTA and TSSU, warm bodies added back in, but any requisitioned not added back in.
Basically hiring freeze. In a.
Yes,
in
thank you,
concept.
yeah, you said that much more eloquently than I was doing.
Just like, no more new ones.
Yeah.
Anyone that stares, okay, no new ones.
So, yeah, I guess that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna make a motion.
I mean, I'm confused, because there's different salaries here.
Do you take that whole block and then just add whatever the sum of that is, which is from those 8 admins positions, you're looking over $1 million right there. And then if you turn around and you did the 2 of them up there with that, that's another 1.25 and another 200,000, you're already up. You're probably would have been better off voting for his motion.
So I'm gonna make a motion to request that we have provided to us complete compensation packages for these positions that are slated for cut in draft 2 that are filled. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but when you guys make cuts, if you make adjustments, there are things that I make as a matter of due course, like retirement, health.
So all that's gonna, yeah.
All that goes precipitously with the positions, but the unemployment also changes a lot.
Correct.
So this is set up a little bit different to what the budget committee had seen before, only because it gets annoying to see all the negatives, right? So the positives showing here are actually cuts. The negative that you see is in addition, the 500
Correct.
for unemployment is a negative. So that in turn would become a mitigating factor against a lot of those as well.
Agreed. What my request would do would give me a number.
Yeah.
To just drop into the 69,599. And say, oh, that's what all of those positions actually represent.
Yeah, and if you just,
But I can't do that with this because it includes Rex.
Correct, yeah. So you've given me a lot of guidance here.
Oh, okay, good. We're on the same page.
Yeah.
It's been a long day for me, Jeff, sorry.
Reasonably so. It's been a long several weeks. But that said, this is a very productive type of guidance, and I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Mrs. Harron, you had a question?
I just want to know when, if a teacher's planning to retire, when do they notify, you? Like, is there a
January
day?
1st.
Late.
by law, they don't have to let the district know up and until June 30th.
That was by January 1st.
No.
We were talking
No
about
way.
that earlier.
So there are certain retirement enhancements or incentives, and correct me if I'm wrong, we have our union folks here. And if those happen to apply to the person who would like to take advantage of them, January 1st is typically the date those are in by. However, I can tell you that we continue to have retirements come in after January 1st.
So if we, right at January 1st, if you get, several notifications, could we take that into account and readjust our budget to not fill those? Is that something that could be done or at least looked at to possibly, reduce that budget? Right now, we don't know, but if they did give their notice as of January 1st, if there were a few of them, then that would enable us to reduce these items too.
I will say this, and I don't see why you couldn't necessarily do that, but I will say this, and I said it earlier with busing as well. It's a lot easier to reduce after you've done a public, hearing type posting. You can certainly reduce, but it becomes very problematic to increase. So
Right,
it's
but that would be before deliberative, if
Well, at
it's
some
by
point-
January 1st.
Yeah, at some point we have to do some postings and things like that. So if it's contemplated, it's probably not a bad thing to do. So for example, transportation has a 17.5% increase. Do we
We have to,
anticipate we're gonna get something?
I think January 4th is the date that we have to have everything ready to post. So it's a week notice before the.
Okay.
The
Public
re-
hearing.
the public hearing.
Okay.
All right,
So I had a motion on
There's a motion on the floor,
Second.
and it was a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Say your motion again, so we're all.
Motion was to request from the business administrator, total compensation package for the currently filled positions that are slated for cuts in our draft 2 budget, to understand what dollar amount that represents.
just for clarity, so these are just the salaries, and you want to see what the,
Total compensation, so,
Totals, right?
yeah, FICA, unemployment benefits, retirement, health.
that's not this number though.
That's correct.
They're separate right now. I think what you're asking for is a conglomeration from all
The real
three
picture.
pieces in
Correct.
one amount.
Yes, of only the filled positions today, so to exclude the
Okay.
three that are part of admin that aren't filled, to remove the interventionist. How many of our open recs are in TTA and TSS?
You're talking warm bodies.
Warm bodies.
Thank you.
So let's procedurally, before you take a vote, if we could just have a quick discussion as to how this is gonna look, because as of right now, I'm not clear on whether I'm coming back with a draft 3 with these put in.
No draft 3 with it put in.
He just wants the number.
Just a bottom line number for those, let's assume for argument's sake, it represents 35.5 employees.
Yep.
I wanna see a bottom line number, total compensation package for those 33.5 employees.
Okay. Who are with warm bodies, so-called. Okay.
Do not include any requisitions,
Yep,
unfilled
got it.
positions, et cetera.
Yes.
I got a question. I don't know if it's gonna be clarified. What are these actual positions? What are their job titles that we're talking about here? I mean,
We don't know, and I
that
think,
doesn't make, I mean,
if
I-
it comes
I-
back with a number, say the number, I'm gonna pick a number here, say it comes back at 1.7 million. I think at that point, I'm gonna say, okay, what are those positions? What are they doing today?
If he deemed that we could operate without them, I mean, I don't know.
Are we reaching past the duties of this board in the sense that we're not here to say what positions exist or not exist? That is the school board and the administration. Our job is a number, so we are not here to, we might say, would like to see a hiring freeze, but let me tell you right now, if they need a specific teacher in a certain department, they're gonna go get it. We don't say, we need this. So I think we need to refocus on, we can use your example and say, that's the dollar, but when we start talking about titles,
Yeah.
who are we to do this? This is not in our purview.
You weren't talking
I
about titles.
second that.
No, I wasn't, but I said, if the number came to be 1.7 arbitrarily,
Yeah,
right?
but
I
to
may
go
get to a
down the
point where I say, I
path-
wanna know what those positions are.
I think we should, and we haven't, names have to stay out of it.
clearly.
Positions have to stay.
And positions need to stay out of it. Positions to the
can't-
point
if
where
you come out and
you
say
can
that
say
it's an
administrator.
elementary teacher,
Mm-hmm.
and now you have 4 elementary school principals trying to
sweating it.
figure out
Yeah.
which one of us is
Uh-huh.
going.
That's not our job.
It's
not.
not.
It's outside the school.
All right.
Do you see what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
I do,
So,
I do, I do.
and-
That's
and
a very valid point.
that was my problem with it too.
So I
didn't
think
wanna know
administrator is just, it's a general
what job
label.
it was. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I think the message we sent last week with his, what's the matter, you all right? I think the message we sent last week with the 69 million was that we wanted a reduction. I mean, hopefully it's not teachers, but we needed a reduction across the board. Was it administration?
But that's his
What it was-
job.
I understand that.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. But I mean, so us, now to get back in the minutia and say, hey, we should add back this in, that's not our decision to make. We have to decide what we can, as a school board, or not as a school, as a taxpaying body, what can we afford? What makes sense?
Agreed.
Okay.
You know, so, but, yeah, I mean.
So you've got your motion. Let's hit it.
Let's do it.
Okay. All in favor of the motion concerning, huh?
The warm body motion.
The warm body motion. Don't put it down like that.
Please don't put it in the minutes.
For the people, for
The other
the
thing is,
cost,
you know-
to determine the cost of salaried personnel,
All benefits, everything.
the benefits and everything.
Fully loaded.
Nothing.
Okay. All in favor? Opposed? It's unanimous.
Great job, Lee.
Thank you. See if it gets us anywhere, I don't know.
Something else we can argue about.
Information, you know.
So we're
Yes.
gonna go prior, we've asked, we've asked,
Yeah, but, exactly.
to sit down, to help us prioritize the
Wait till the
cuts
next meeting.
from draft two.
And see what that draft, see what that comes out. You know what I mean?
And then, in
There's
our
more
next
information
meeting,
coming.
you will review the budget. I'm gonna ask everyone to review the full line budget that you all have for draft two, the 69.5 mil. And with that information that we've just got, that we will be getting, we will vet that, and then appropriate changes with the objective of having a budget that we could present to public hearing.
Correct.
I'd like to make a motion, and it's a selfish motion, to move the Thursday, December 14th meeting to Tuesday, December 12th. And if I get a second and we go to discussion, I'll tell you why.
I'll second that.
Thank you both. Reason being, I leave that evening. I would not be able to be here, and I want to be involved in the process. So I know it's selfish of me,
No, it's
but,
not. It's not selfish.
I think you seem to be voting
if I
against
can
me, so
inconvenience
I'd
you
rather
all,
have you
I'd
not
like to
be
move
here.
it to that date.
I don't know my schedule, I have to check
Yeah.
it, but I.
Is the room available?
Yeah.
I have no problem with it, even though you're voting against me most of the time.
So here's my suggestion.
Calendar, it's available.
Here's my suggestion.
So
And
many
I'm not even
calendars.
sure you need a motion for this, but I think it's extremely important that we get 10 bodies voting on anything we're doing. So if it takes to move the date to get a member here, I'd say go do it.
Yes, I agree.
And so, here's what maybe you can do is work with Kathy Belcher. Poll the board, maybe to Lee's point of the 12th, and if it works, just change it. You got a far enough advance notice.
Because we are a public committee, are we under the auspices of a 10-day rule, 10 business days?
24 hours.
24 hours, you gotta post
24
it.
Public hearing deliberative is 7.
Days? Oh, 7? They changed that back from
Okay,
the
so
old
there's
days.
a motion on the floor to move the current.
I'm gonna amend it, I'm gonna amend it.
No, don't.
I'm not gonna amend it.
No, but just bear with me. If you
Okay.
make a motion for a hard date, and Kathy polls and says, and you say the 12th, and Kathy finds out it's not the 12th, it's the 13th, where are we? So
Right.
just let Kathy do her homework,
Let Kathy do it.
and you just change it. Do we really need a motion, is my question.
All right, I'll withdraw the
I think
motion.
by the bylaw, I think we have to, by the bylaws, we have to vote on on the new date.
Okay.
So,
And I think that, we can certainly.
Make a
put
motion to
that-
waive that requirement.
Yeah, we
Let's
can do
move on.
that, or we can just vote on whatever day works for us, to be determined, TBD.
there's no polling though, it sounded like the 12th worked, right? So it's just pending Kathy's ability. to
Eileen
I don't
and-
know.
and Julian.
Yeah,
did
there's
that.
some
check on
people that didn't know, so I mean, you can be.
So,
So,
you can delegate the authority, right? Waive it.
so, Eileen, you're saying you don't know yet,
I have to check my schedule, which I do not have with me,
and
so.
Ms. Hammond, you
I
have to.
don't know my schedule yet.
Would
I've
be
gotta
7
check.
o'clock
Yeah.
start time, is that goes?
All right, let's
We do it earlier, would that make-
It's a tentative shoot date,
What, the
and,
But
13th?
just confirming
Early's
if we're
fine.
talking at 7 o'clock, so I can.
and 7 o'clock
I'll check.
on Tuesday,
12th,
The 12th.
12th.
except I have a meeting in Hampstead that night for their budget.
Oh,
Well, that won't work.
With who?
Hampstead.
See, that's not in the calendar.
In my calendar.
I know.
We're gonna find out the room's open too, right?
The room's open,
Do
that's
they
what I
wanna
was
meet on the
telling
14th?
Yeah.
He'll just be in a different town.
That's right.
You can invite them here, see how that goes.
Yeah.
Is their budget lower?
Are you making a motion to drop their budget?
It's lower.
Budget's a lot lower, 25.
So on a serious note, if you need, you by rule need to be here, what's another date other than the 12th? That Lee can
Next week.
coordinate with the other people.
And next week, the school board.
Right.
So it'd be between.
Yeah, but we
Monday-
don't have to
Monday
do it
the-
on a Thursday.
Right.
Do it next week on a different night that everybody's free.
Tuesday's booked.
I think we should let the school board get a chance to have their meeting, not where they were rushed, like today, I felt they were rushed. I got a feeling they're gonna have a lot of discussion on where they're gonna go and possibly make some potential cuts or decisions that will affect us and our decision, because I don't think we would be funding a position or a direction that is not endorsed by the school board.
If they meet on Thursday, we can do Friday.
That's up to you guys.
Works for me. I have no life. Don't do anything on Friday nights.
I can't do Friday, I know that. I have the pub crawl tomorrow.
Monday the 11th?
It's Thursday night
there
football.
you go, right?
I have a
11th.
selectmen's meeting, but I would, so do,
All
before we
right,
go to that.
let's do this. David, could you ask Kathy, since we don't all have our schedules, can you ask Kathy to poll, well, it's not that hard, it's either the 8th or the 11th, right?
We already have one person saying no to Friday.
Yeah, okay.
I can't.
So then it's the 11th, or, you said the 12th you have a meeting?
Or the 13th.
Or the 13th?
Right.
You do the 13th, Lee?
The 12th, he's out.
Are you gone 13?
That's Wednesday.
Can we do the 13th? Let's do the 13th.
I can, it's gonna be,
Start
I'll
early?
be here later. It'll probably be similar to what happened tonight.
Save the good stuff for you then.
It's just I'm in a perfect storm right now.
Ask her if the room is free, and to poll the members for either December 11th or December 13th.
Correct.
Okay. I'll do that tomorrow.
Thank you.
Yes,
Make a motion to waive whatever policy it is that we have to vote on the next date, changing the date of our next meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
great. Okay. All right, so I will check with Kathy tomorrow. And,
No, you can finish that.
yeah, I'm gonna on the, poll the members about which day, the 11th or the 13th, is good for our next meeting, and to confirm if the room is available on either of those days. Okay. Yes,
So with this cut list that we had for draft 2, we had asked about a priority list on that.
yes, that,
There are items that we voted on last week before we made the cut that we took out that are on this list. So I would ask that there's no consideration for those items that we decided before that cut to take out. There was some Sandown Central things on there. We had talked about the fiber, we had talked about stuff, so.
It's funny that you mentioned that. I have, if you notice the capital CIP running tally, running schedule, it's trying so hard to keep things organized on a list.
It's the last page.
And what ended up happening was, you all voted on a number of things at the last meeting, and other things were removed from the budget, so the list doesn't correlate to what's actually in the budget from a budget committee perspective. How do we true that up? And it's not a huge deal, but it's nice to be able to track that, which we really can't do right now. Does it matter?
I'm saying on this CIP sheet, how do we track it?
Right, so we have budget committee status as of 11/21. You all voted to remove the fiber connection, for example, a couple other things, the
Projectors.
projectors.
Which are, those are reflected still on this sheet, though.
Did you vote out the Walmart projectors?
No. We did not.
No, that was removed.
But they were removed.
From draft two, so they should be removed from here.
Well, you never really approved those.
What's that?
Yeah.
So if you're okay for me to just blanket and mirror what's on here to here,
Yes.
I can do that. Is that okay?
Whatever was on the meeting notes from the last time, I'm highlighting them. We went through CIP to zero them out
we didn't-
for this upcoming year.
Well, you had 4 or 5 things that are reflected as zeroed out on this current list.
Okay.
It's just that we went and removed a lot of other things that are on this list,
Right.
which I didn't touch here because you didn't approve the cut. But if it's okay with you, I can just zero those out so that this and the cut sheet match, if that's okay. It's sort of a
That's
blanket.
fine, yes.
Yes, please.
Okay. I know we talked about my wanting you to have, if something's gonna be removed, that you're voting on it, even if it's obvious. But if that's the case, at least the list will tie out at that point.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Okay.
So, John, you were asking that the CIP items that are cut on draft two based on our prior motions not be prioritized when they come back to us.
We already had decided before that, and discussed removing those from the budget already. So why would we add them back in?
And then what, prioritize them
Or-
and then.
And, yeah,
Just-
why add them in as a priority if we've already decided as a board to add them back in?
So I think it may make for interesting discussion to see if a particular item gets that we cut has a high priority. Maybe there was something that we truly didn't understand when we made that cut. Maybe there's been feedback from the community, and I'm saying that because I made the cut to the fiber. And I told you how many communications I've had with people, and in talking about with them, hey, what did you cut? Why did you cut? Why were you in favor of this? And what was important to them? One of the things that came out of those discussions was more than a handful, but it wasn't, the majority, was security is important to me. And we talked in non-public about the role that the fiber played. So I'm reconsidering that.
The other thing, we didn't cut it in the sense of not doing it. We cut it to make it a warrant, to recommend a warrant.
Here, just a quick way to reflect. Anything that's on this list right now, you all voted on to remove, and I can reflect in this priority list that you voted on to remove it. And I can still attach a priority to it, at least you know what the stat, where it came from.
Yep.
And I think maybe highlighting the warrant article.
Yeah.
Having it in there, highlighting it, we talked about it.
So what I'm getting at, John, is the administration may come back and say fiber is priority 5. Well, that's pretty high on the priority list. And I've already heard from the community that security is an important thing to them.
Mhm.
Well, those kind of converge. Now my position really changes.
Okay, yes.
I just had a question on this draft two, on just a couple of items. There's the tuition private and other elementary for 40,000, then tuition private and other high school, 360. What is that? Because I know when it's usually with the special ed type of thing, I thought that was something that was not a negotiable item.
As well as the student transportation.
Right.
At 100.
So why is that on there as being cut?
You asked for 5.5 million, or you asked for 69.
But that's not a logical, that's not a, you know, you can't do that.
It's basically level funds or provide some additional to what's in the current budget.
So when we go through.
Right, but aren't we obligated? Don't we have to provide this support to these people? I mean, isn't there some sort of law or policy or something? I mean, it's not just us out of the, you know, goodwill of the administration's heart to pay for all this stuff. That's like, you know, that can't stay off. You know that can't stay a cut. That's going to get added back in. That's got to be added back in.
Is it a
Why would you even
difference?
put that on there?
We were given a number of 69, 556, or whatever it was, 956.
Yeah, but what I think she's asking is that if
Let's say how
we're
crazy
required
they can put
to
it back in and see how crazy these
By
are.
law.
Provide
the
this.
services,
They'll
and it's gonna cost us
Please, somebody say
what's
that.
listed on there, then we can't cut it.
I'm not sure that 69, 599, 955 is a number that's going to fund the things that we need to do by
That's
law.
not I'm not talking about the 69, I'm
Not
talking
sure.
about the two items.
Three
related to-
items.
Three items that are related to, special ed.
Special ed, it's getting the same money or a little bit more than it got in the previous year. The number that was given is very, very thin and probably does
So-
not cover those things that we're required legally to provide.
Do
This is a
those
number
three
you guys
numbers,
gave me to put together.
do those three numbers, Jeff, remember I'd asked the question 2 weeks ago whenever we met about students that take a program out of district get reimbursed? Is that some of that number?
None of it.
Okay, that's none of that. This is truly special education.
Correct, and
Got it.
the funds you were talking about, that's the next agenda item, which I don't have for this evening. Those students are paid mileage, it's the next thing, those students are paid, we're reimbursed by the state. We've still got to show if.
Yeah, I remember you saying there was a wash, yeah.
Anyway,
So could I suggest that in that prioritization process, that you go through whatever the categories are, it sort of sounds like mandatory is a category, safety is a category, that those be listed next to the item, that way it's like abundantly clear, look, these are just like, basically, they're the non-negotiables. At the end of the day, we might be negotiating them, but we're gonna be negotiating them going, we better really understand why we're doing it on those ones.
Yeah, that's
You know?
not, yeah.
So
okay.
that's just a request.
David, just a point of clarification on the large budget sheet. When I look at a cut, I automatically go to that line item. And I don't know whether it's reflected here or not on the way that you ran this. 1,200,564.00, which would be basically private tuition. For the current 2017 expended, 1.4 million. For budgeted for 2017 was 1,666,000. So that reduction corresponds to what was expended versus what was allocated, correct? I'm on page 2 of the packet that you gave us this evening.
oh, just on the object report? Okay.
Yeah, I'm not trying to get into the big details, but just in a general look-through, that's where you had to have arrived at that number, because it's almost, off the top of my head, not doing the math, 200 and something thousand in that line is the difference. That was expended versus what was budgeted for.
Right, so you're,
Is that where it's reflected in these two numbers? That
so
way?
the number that you're looking at, is it the 2148?
I'm looking at 1,200,564 tuition private. I've gone across to, I believe, the fourth column.
Oh, okay.
2017 budgeted, 2017 expended, and the difference was 192,000. I'm trying to get a flavor of how the arrival came basically a 400 grand out of the tuition item. Did the kid graduate? Are the kids that have graduated that you know are gonna graduate by the end of this year? Is that a factor? Or do we look at the expenditure versus what was budgeted from the previous year?
No, the special ed and student services are among my best budgeted groups in the district.
Right.
And so,
Yeah.
when they look at that, they do take those factors into consideration.
Okay.
However, we are just seeing more
Going out.
placements. Yeah,
Yeah,
more due process, more, there's just a lot more activity going out, a lot
Placement.
more of a need.
Right.
And we do try, as you know, our first priority is to keep the students in district.
Correct.
So it's just the reality, and this year's budget, we're on track to be at that 1.642. So that 19 requested as it stands right now really is one placement.
Okay.
That's it.
That's what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, and that's not-
There's a round number that was put on the cut chart
Right.
out of that line item as a general amount, not that it's a specific kid or a specific program.
Yep.
I just wanted to clarify it for Julie.
Yep, and that really reflects their increase.
Right, okay. So you're not breaking the law by doing it the way you did it on the cut list, is what I'm trying to
Well,
point
no,
out.
we'd be breaking the law by not providing the service.
Correct.
So what you're saying is the numbers that are listed on here as being the cuts is more than they actually think they might need, they're
No.
going to need?
No, I think what they're looking at, I think in that particular line item, they are among my best.
Right.
So in other words,
So
that-
there's not a lot of fluff there.
Really isn't.
So
No,
why
if
would
he has
we?
more than one placement, if he has
Yeah.
two, he's overspent that budget, needs to find the money somewhere. Because we're
Right.
not gonna not place
Fund it.
one and then break the law,
Right.
right?
So why would we take this off, why are we looking at, in this particular area when we ask for, meaningful places for
Because that-
making cuts?
that 1.8 million that you have now is the 2019 requested amount of 1.834 million. It would have been an extra 400,000, so it would have been 2.2 million.
Which is probably a fair assessment as to what that's going to be. Where do we have room? We probably have, we may have a little bit of room in the student transportation end of it. We have been receiving.
Good point.
Able to leverage shared rides for our students or out-of-district placements. So that is one area that we have had some room. But
That's gonna be up in the contract, that's gotta be renewed with them as
No,
well?
it's a
Or
different
is that
contract.
different?
That one's just got renewed.
That's different,
No,
okay.
and in that contract, when that was negotiated and closed, I put in that contract that our vendor would do everything that they could do, because we can't do it. That if they can do a shared ride along the way, that they would do that. If we have a placement in, town C, or in town A, they're going through town B, which is not in our district, not part of our jurisdiction. If they have a pickup where it's possible and feasible, that they would make that shared ride happen.
Okay.
So we could benefit from that shared ride. So we do probably have a bit of room there, because legally we're required to provide transportation, right? But if we can benefit from a shared ride, then we can realize some cost savings.
Okay.
We don't get a discount when we send two students to the same placement, or just ask them to take them for half a day or something. But we
Right.
do have room on that transportation line. Legally speaking, that may work. We could end up in a situation that they're able to provide transportation for every student, one bus. They just don't have enough drivers, that's the reality of it. But we still have to budget for those students' transportations as if they would be providing them.
Right, right,
But,
of
so
course.
that goes back to my original point, that I applaud you for looking creatively at the money savings, because if you can defray the cost, because if he does it for one student, it's the same amount of money, and whatever, let's say he goes from here to, Rye, and you pick up a second kid that's going to Portsmouth to another school, at least you're splitting with another district for that one bus.
Right.
It's a savings, but you really can't show that because you don't know what next year will bring. So I think it's,
And the thing that concerns me is that they've been doing it not because I put it in the contract.
Right.
They've been doing it because
They have
it
no
saves.
drivers.
They have no drivers.
Right, right.
So if they happen to get a lot of drivers next year, they may be able to accommodate,
however, you could, and I'm not trying to overstep my bound to the board, you could be in a conversation with the board that when feasible, with the transportation company, if they're matched to a different district, going to the same place, it would be in both interests of the districts to job share, I guess is what I'll call it.
I agree, and I think it gets tough because of the sensitivity of the nature of the students
Correct.
involved.
You have the intermediary, which is the transportation, they have something to gain too. They have one contracted person for 2 districts.
Oh, sure.
So it's one amount versus having 2 buses, 2 drivers,
Yep.
and all the expenses they have to charge back to 2 districts.
Yep.
Just, I'm affirming, I agree with going this direction. I don't know how we can even go further in that little
Area.
push
Yeah.
to the transportation company for those special programs.
Yeah.
So, I think we just, to move on, just be clear, so we're going to be working with the draft 2 budget. We're going to prioritize, we're going to have prioritization done by Jeff of the cuts that, on the summary sheet. And we are going to review at home the large formal budget, object budget, to look for places that need to have changes, either up or down. Is that clear? Is that basically it?
I would also like to see is the school board has requested that $1 million to add it on top of that. What would your recommendation to them? I'd like a copy of it for us so that we can turn it around and debate on its merits.
Their polling, as far as I could tell, was a recommendation to this board that they supported $1 million increase to the 69.6.
Correct.
So I don't know that I don't know if the motion, as I heard it, was not that they wanted their budget put together with the $1 million put in for them.
Nope, that's what it was.
So they wanted it for
They
them?
asked for the superintendent to come back with a budget with $1 million added in it.
No, there was discussion around them making that as a recommendation.
Well, we don't have to turn around and listen to it. I mean, that's their own
For this
thing.
board.
What I'm saying is that I'd like to see us a copy of that
For the
here.
school board. I mean, if that is the directive, then.
No, we don't have to do anything.
It won't be.
Yeah, I don't know. You'd probably just have to talk to Dr. Metzler, but that's how it was
Yeah,
put.
I wasn't paying full attention.
No, I understand that. That's how it was put. So I tried to clarify that, and they said no, they want a budget reflecting that
So
$1 million increase.
what are we gonna use? You're gonna use the 70?
Well, we left it that we're gonna be prioritizing everything on this sheet, barring the stuff that we've already pulled out of the CIP. In addition to that, I mean, this is all the cuts, so part of that is you start prioritizing, there should be a part in there that says, we've reached a $1 million school board
Recommendation.
recommended, thank you, the number, and here's that part. That's the stuff that got up to that priority. And then now here's all the additional priority of everything else on this list. And then that will be presented. So we'd like to turn around and have that finite number,
Is
of the $1
everybody
million.
So, with all this in mind, is everybody okay to, as a goal of the committee, to be able to create a budget for public hearing by the time we're through on the 14th or 13th or 11th or whatever the final date is? Okay, our next meeting. Is that a reasonable goal?
It's gonna be another rev of there. We have another meeting before.
Frankly, what I'm trying to avoid is a meeting between Christmas and New Year's, if we can.
That 28th, the meeting on the 28th.
A meeting on the 28th.
Which historically has been.
Nobody shows
gonna
up
run
to,
cancel
or
the
you
cancel
can't get to
meeting.
it.
Yeah, you're gonna run
There's not enough bodies to have a meeting.
Yes.
I promise to do my homework, and I'm sure everybody else will, to come to I wrote it down. I mean, draft number 3, from my point of view, is the $70,599,955 that the board had directed him.
But that's not draft 3.
I understand it, but we could make it draft 3 at the next meeting. See what I'm trying to say? We could approve from that point, or on the priority list, 100,000 more, 200,000 more, based upon the priority list we're given.
So you're just basically saying in the next meeting, we will define the criteria
Yeah.
around which the.
And let's come down to a bottom line number. That should be our discussion. I don't want to waste another meeting hashing out. I mean, I think we have a pretty good feeling where people around the table are at. Now we're talking about meat and potatoes for supper, and let's talk about the meat and potatoes and move on and hand it to the, approve budget to Jeff to go talk to Dr. Metzler at the next school board meeting. They can have at it.
Have at it, though, what are they gonna do with it?
How they're going to strategize at the public hearing, I would say. Are they going to be with us or against us?
Public hearing, the school board won't be there.
The school board will
I
be there.
understand that, but they can come up as private citizens and poke holes in what we're doing, period. They're still, citizens. So I want to make sure that they have prior knowledge of what we're doing. Not for public comment to us necessarily, but this is our last line of defense. This is where we are.
So we think the draft 3 would be completed by the end of the next meeting.
That's my goal.
Would that be draft 3 or the final approved to move forward to a public hearing?
Well, when I say draft 3, I only mean that we've got draft 2 here in front of us. The only changes that I'm making for this board are to do some prioritization on this list.
Correct.
We're all gonna get together, and a couple other things, we're all gonna get together. The budget, for all intents and purposes, draft 2 does not change when we leave here today.
Correct.
You then evaluate those, and then I make those changes into draft 3, which you could adopt as your final draft.
We could,
Yeah.
exactly. Are you fine with that?
Yeah.
Are we clear on all?
Yes. But just so I'm clear, we're not, that meeting that's scheduled already for the 28th is not, it's still on the table. and
It's still on the table, and we will not take it off the table until we are satisfied that we have created a budget that's for the public hearing.
Right.
That's the driver, is that we gotta have a budget, but we gotta have the budget for the public hearing.
Right.
And if we can't complete the work at the next meeting, then we have to meet on the 28th to create the budget for the hearing. That's our last shot, because we have to have, that has to be presented to signed off for public hearing by January 4. Okay? Clear as mud?
So my only thing is, so we've talked about staffing, which of course I think is gonna be a priority on that list, right? A lot of the CIP stuff. We do have we have 3 teams that were taken off unfunded. And I know those kids are gonna go for the next few weeks, wondering if they're gonna have teams or not, until we get that in there. I mean, does anybody want to look at adding their funding from 2017
I'll make a motion to
back
add
in?
that funding back in.
I'll second it.
Yeah. Let's just do it. And I'm not in favor of cutting any program like that, so.
And it doesn't have to be the 50,000, I mean.
We can talk about that after though, right?
Okay.
So let's
Yeah.
put it back, get this off that list.
Okay.
Let's get it off the cut list, period.
Yeah.
And we'll deal with that other part that you're speaking to, which I totally agree with you, after. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, you've made the motion second, so.
Yep.
All right.
Comment?
Again, aren't we going off track? Because it's not up to us who we hire, who we don't hire, what teams we keep or don't. It's not us.
I agree, but I want that 50K for those sports off this list.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
I
a
agree
matter-
with you.
Yeah. What he's talking about is just the full-time equivalents, like blank.
Got it.
I just want that off the list.
So-
Because I don't think that's something that we would consider anyways, but.
So from a procedural perspective, that's something that's a change that if it passed, the motion passed would be something you'd all agree would be ready for draft 3.
With
I'm gonna leave it on this
minus
list.
50,000.
I'm gonna leave it on this list and say approved for draft 3.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah,
Staying
I'm
on the
fine with
list,
that.
You're essentially giving
Put an
them,
asterisk on it or something. and-
so it still stays on the list, but it's,
Right.
So procedurally, it's covered, but folks understand
That's mainly to John's point, people are gonna
De-stress.
be like wondering what's going on with it, and I'd
Okay.
rather
Mhm.
that
And
not
you can-
happen.
and you can deal with it.
Move the question.
Well, my daughter's not directly, but her friends are, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to deal
All in
with it.
favor of this motion? Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. Any other, clear on what we're gonna be doing at the next meeting?
Mm-hmm. I know that Rev 3 has increased 50 grand so far.
Yes.
Okay.
Let's see if we can wrap up the rest of the business. Yeah, parking lot revolving mileage reimbursements.
We just talked about that.
We just talked about that, so we're done with it?
No, I can leave it in the parking lot, and we can take a better look
All
at
right,
it.
we'll take a-
You
move it
think
later.
we'll have it by the meeting on the
14,
date to be determined?
12, whatever it is.
Yeah. Any other new business?
Yes, I'd like to get an update on the income side statements, Jeff.
Oh, we should have that as well. So, and as soon as I can get that together, I'll post it out there for you guys.
Because I thought I was gonna be ready tonight.
I didn't expect that we would have this level of revised budget for this meeting.
Okay.
So,
Any other new business? Is there, a budget committee members have reports?
No, there was a Sandown, it was held in Sandown, the strategic planning. I was not able to go, I was planning to go, but wasn't able to. So I actually don't have any information. I don't think, Jim, I think you said you weren't able to go either, right?
No.
So unfortunately, I don't have, it happened. Can't tell you how it
We do have a planned meeting coming up
Yeah.
prior to our next meeting, and I would say that you and I can talk after what we want to present.
Is there any other business to come before this board? I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So made.
Second? All in favor? The meeting has been closed at 10:20 PM.